brand new episode of the Brickyard podcast, the best podcast in sports, the podcast for sports fans. And we are here to preview everything around the NBA playoffs. We are going to be breaking down this insane gridlock. I mean, we have six teams, the three seed all the way through the A seed, separated by two games. Absolutely ridiculous stuff going on. And then we have coaches getting fired out of nowhere right before the playoffs when no interim coach has ever won in NBA history. And don't tell me it was Tyronn Lue because he was promoted to head coach by then. And then we're also going to go over the 2007 draft because that draft took place right after the Gators won the national championship. And guess what Al Horford was doing in San Antonio this weekend with Corey Brewer? They are out here chomping. And then Al Horford also said, I'm coming back next year. I'm not retiring because all I have to do is play hard on defense in the playoffs and shoot some threes in the regular season, and maybe one or two games I'll get hot and win it for you. But a absolutely stunning finish to the NBA season. I mean, ever since the Luka Doncic trade, I feel like the NBA has really turned it around. The league feels more competitive this year, and then people are asking for parity. Well, I don't know how much more parity you can get than this, and then we'll go over that. And then also, the Gators won the national championship, so that had a lot of implications in the 2007 draft, right?
Yeah, naturally. We had the last time the Gators won. So the Gators won the championship. Congratulations to that team and their NBA hopeful players. But the last time they won the title was the 2007 championship season, led by none other than Al Horford, the bald companion of the Celtics that we know and love, Corey Brewer, legend of the show, and then Joakim Noah, another legend of the 2010s. So I figured, especially fitting with potentially the end of the Phoenix era for Kevin Durant, with Al Horford and the ageless wonder that is, plus with the Gators winning the title, going through the 2007 NBA draft, who won, who lost, who had the best picks, who had the worst, and ultimately breaking down, analyzing the 2007 draft, which is going down as one of the most infamous drafts in NBA history, ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, that was a crazy year for sports, right? You have the Florida Gators winning the national championship. You have Kevin Durant coming into the league. You have the Lamar Odom debacle. And you also have the first, was that the first undefeated season ever, or was that 2011?
That was 2007 for the Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. So crazy year for sports. And then you have the Portland Trailblazers again take the wrong guy. We've talked about teams like kind of getting lucky. Sometimes the other team just takes the wrong guy and the right guy falls into your lap. What's happened to the Celtics with the Sixers and the Lakers taking the wrong guy, and then Portland, they did it with Michael Jordan and they did it with Kevin Durant.
Yeah. So 1984, they have Akeem Olajuwon's taken. Then they have between Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan. Sam Bowie, a guy with knee issues in college, or Michael Jeffrey Jordan, who some may say is the greatest of all time. They take the guy with knee issues. Flash forward, call it 27 years later, call it. They have the similar predicament. Do we take a big man who has had injuries in college, or do we take this 7-1 shooter who will become one of the greatest scorers in NBA history? They picked Greg Oden. And Greg Oden played what I think breaks down to about 19% of his games. The last time we saw him was on the Heatles, and he's been out of the league for many years now. Keeping in mind that the year that they could have taken Kevin Durant, he could have been paired with Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, and eventually maybe Damian Lillard. So, like, what could have happened potentially if Kevin Durant joined the Trailblazers? Ultimately, he goes to the Supersonics, what then becomes the Thunder, which then becomes the greatest collection of MVPs to never win a title in a short period of time. Kevin Durant could have been a Trailblazer. What could have been in the NBA potentially?
Yeah, no, he could have been a trailblazer. That's like interesting. And I feel like, him and Lamarcus Aldridge would have been a really good duo, because they both have that Dirk Nowitzki style, but Lamarcus Aldridge was more of a mid range player, but he did develop a 3-point shot towards the end of his career. And, I just remembered those back to back 40-point games that he had in that series when Damian Lillard was a rookie versus the Houston Rockets. back-to-back 40-point games. So he was capable of going on an absolute tear with him and Kevin Durant. And you'd have Brandon Roy, eventually Nicholas Batum getting drafted there, as well as Wesley Matthews, who probably had his best years in Portland. Let's be honest. I feel like he struggled with injuries after that, but that could have been really interesting. But like you whiff on two of the greatest scorers of all time.
Two guys that are in the 30,000 point club. And interestingly enough, like Greg Oden gets drafted and then in summer ball tears his knee apart, doesn't play the entire season. And then the next season, he has probably his most productive season, scores about 8 points a game. But then the following, not one, but 2 seasons, 3 seasons, I'm sorry, has a devastating injury, does not play from 2010 all the way until 2014. This man falls apart, literally taking the original playbook and building the groundwork for Joel Embiid's PTO policy with the 76ers. So Greg Oden, literally made of actual glass, maybe made of dirt or sandpaper. We don't know.
Wait, so you're telling me that Post Malone wrote that song about Greg Oden?
What song?
I Fall Apart.
I fall apart. Greg Oden was pretty much born broken. I mean, he was 7 foot tall, 250, but like the pressure that he must have had on his knees because he was a bigger build was just devastating. But nonetheless, first overall pick was Greg Oden. They whiffed. It should have been Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, one of the best of our generation. And then very next pick, Al Horford, Atlanta. Plays a great time with Atlanta. I believe they made a conference finals a couple of times with the Hawks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they had that one year they were the number one seed, and they got like 60 wins. They had the best record in the East, and then the Cavs swept them in the conference finals. It was like Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford, and then maybe Dennis Schroeder at the time. But
Yeah, and they've quietly. I feel like Al Horford's quietly had a Hall of Fame career because he had his Atlanta era where he was consistently an All Star. He was a All NBA player a couple of times, and then I feel like his second wind was going to Boston, really like forming and kind of helping Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown mature as players. He leaves for a little bit. He returns, helps them win their title last year, potentially with their ring, potentially this year as well. And he's consistently been in that defensive player of the year conversation, whether it be with the Celtics and then ultimately with the Hawks. So, like Al Horford at this point, we see him 5-time All Star. He's won a championship now. He's had an All NBA career as well. And ultimately, like, would you say he's a Hall of Famer at this point? 117 win shares as well.
yeah, I would say so. Especially he was the main driving focal point of that Atlanta Hawks team, and there's definitely worse players in the Hall of Fame than Al Horford. He's an elite defender. I mean, some of those Celtics playoff runs when they got to the NBA Finals and lost the first time, but those series where they'll get into a battle versus Milwaukee and versus Philadelphia. Well, it's never really a battle with Philadelphia, more of a cakewalk. But the point is, the person who's guarding Joel Embiid or Giannis was either Marcus Smart or Al Horford. Al Horford honestly did the best job of guarding Giannis or Joel Embiid than any other player. And then Tatum would take him, but it was mostly Horford who was shutting him down. So not only defensively, and now he's evolved into a 3-and-D player where we're having these rumors about Kevin Durant coming to Boston, when personally at this point in both of their respective careers, I think Al Horford is more valuable to this team with what he provides on defense, leadership wise, and then he's kind of the heart driving engine of this team. Like he got to Boston at 31 when Jalen Brown was 21 and Jason Tatum was 20, or they were 19 and 20, I believe. So
They're
he's at the
babies.
start of their career, and then
Yeah,
now
they're
he's
babies.
38. So he's kind of like stuck with them that whole time. So I feel like he definitely deserves a Hall of Fame nod, and he's still a efficient basketball player, and he's been a great player for them. And then him coming off the bench is going to elongate his career even more.
Yeah, and I feel like he still has a lot in the tank. He's still great defensively. He hasn't maybe he's not the same scorer that he once was. Maybe his legs aren't quite as spry as they were, but I still feel like he is still insanely productive. So I'd like to see him win another ring with the Celtics or ultimately finding that great opportunity. But Al Horford, I'd put him as a Hall of Famer at this point, just the way his second win has been. Um, And then the
Especially the
fourth,
modern NBA, I feel like he could definitely play to like 40, 41. Especially with how he stays in shape. Like he doesn't really show fatigue in the playoffs, especially with having like multiple bigs with Porzingis and then you have Cornet off the bench. He really doesn't have to play a lot.
no, play like 15, 20 minutes and he's good. But Al Horford was the third overall pick. Fourth overall pick was Mike Conley, another guy who is still playing in the league at this point. So far in this draft, we have, and we're going to go over another guy that's played in this league for a million years, the very next pick. But Mike Conley, another guy who at one point, I wouldn't say he was the best point guard in the league, but he was one of those guys that when you're floating around quality point guards in the league, Mike Conley was a guy that deserved a shout out. He played, with Utah, played for Memphis for a little bit. Now he's on the Timberwolves, but bounced
Mhm.
around. Was never like a consistent all star, but was always just a really solid player. And I always felt like slightly underrated as well.
Yeah, and the reason why he's underrated is he's a good floor general and he's a fine offensive player and he definitely has a really good skill set. But at one point, when we were talking about the best two-way guards in the league, it was Mike Conley, it was Drew Holiday, it was Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo, and Kyle Lowry, and those are kind of your top like pit bull guards who are really good offensively, but also they could make an all defensive team for you. So I really think his legacy was built as a two-way player, especially with that hard-nosed identity of Memphis. Like he just fit right into that culture, and then just like the battles that Memphis and would have with San Antonio, with him, Tony Parker going back and forth with Chris Paul, like it was like a pretty even rivalry, and he could face up any point guard in the league and look him down.
Yeah. And I feel like he might not go in the Hall of Fame, but he'll be in the Hall of Very Good or Hall of Good ultimately. If that existed, I feel like he's a guy that deserves a shout out. But interesting. He's been successful wherever he's gone. Whether it was the Jazz, the Grizzlies, and then even with the Timberwolves. I feel like his addition has helped the development of Anthony Edwards as well as a younger player. I think there is still some more things to learn with Anthony Edwards for Mike Conley, maybe maturity wise, but ultimately, I feel like Mike Conley has also helped with the development of Anthony Edwards and the way he's been able to ascend as a player too.
Yeah, he's just one of those really valuable, good chemistry, intangible guys where he just does a lot of things for your organization as a whole that people just don't see show up in the box score.
Exactly. Now, the fifth player that was taken in this draft was ultimately taken by the quote unquote Celtics, but this was a package that ultimately brought Ray Allen to the Celtics because they traded Jeff Green, who's still playing in the league, by the way. Every time you think that Jeff Green has retired, he springs up somewhere, which I don't
He's
believe he's.
Houston.
Yeah, he's on Houston now. He's been playing for a million years. He's been a role player. He's had some years, like I remember the old Celtics teams, like after they broke up with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, was just like one of those role players for the Celtics that was electric, even though they were like winning 30 games at that time. Just blew up off the screen.
He dropped. I remember watching this game as a kid, um, with my grandma in my basement, and it was against the Heatles, and it was like when they were kind of pushing for the playoffs, and Jeff Green ended up dropping 42 points and then sinking a corner three over LeBron James, and it was probably like 2012, 2013 when they were really rebuilding, or 2014. So I was like 13 or 12 and I was in awe of Jeff Green. And as like moving on from the Paul Pierce era, those teams were like a lot of fun to watch. You'd have players like Avery Bradley, Brandon Bass was hanging around for too long, Jared Sullinger, Phil Pressey was a guy who was there. We had Chris Humphreys on the team at one point.
Oh
It's just
God,
all these
Marshawn
random
Brooks.
players cycling through. So like Jeff Green like will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I agree. That's the way I feel about Jeff Green too. Plus, also later on in his career, like the way he was able to contribute to the Nuggets championship team, another part that helps build his legacy. And he's played for a million other teams. Like I know he's playing for Houston now, but I remember him on the Nets with that really fun Nets team before they ruined it with Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. That team with like D'Angelo Russell. He was a part of that team. That was a lot of
What?
fun.
I
And he's played
forgot
a bunch
about
of other
that.
places. Yeah, that team was a lot of fun, and then they just ruined it like they normally do in Brooklyn. And then he was even a part of the Cavs with the last finals run with LeBron. So he's just one of those guys that would be great on a podcast. I'm sure he has a podcast. Everyone has a podcast these days, but Jeff Green is just one of those guys that I feel like has some of the greatest NBA stories. He's almost like NBA folklore at this point.
Yeah, no, I feel like Jeff Green's one of those guys though that should have a podcast but doesn't, just because he probably
That makes
has
him that makes him cooler in my
self-respect.
mind. That makes him cooler in my mind. Respect to Jeff Green. Now, later in this draft, this is when the draft card starts to kind of wean around a little bit. Typically, like the first 5 picks in the NBA, there's always like one superstar and then a wild card and then a bust in the top 3 picks. And so far, this draft continues that narrative. We have the superstar with Kevin Durant. We have the bust with Greg Oden. The wild card is Al Horford, who is a legend of the game. And then the remaining 2 picks, Mike Conley became a star. Jeff Green became folklore, ultimately.
Yeah, like 3 really good intangible picks in a row though, which is kind of like a toughness story of this draft, which is funny because they follow up Kevin Durant. It's like, well, we had Kevin Durant, Mr. Sensitive, and then we had to get 3 really tough players after. Like Jeff Green literally had open heart surgery.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Jesus Christ.
That's why they
No,
traded him. They're like, heart surgery? No. We'll come
no,
back
fuck
later when
them.
you feel better.
Celtics kind of have a history of doing that. Like, oh, your sister died. Oh, that sucks. We're gonna trade you for Kyrie Irving with
Yeah, your
Isaiah
hip is
Thomas. Your hip's
mm.
not looking too good. We're gonna bum you off to the Cavs and ruin the Cavaliers potentially. Yeah, Celtics are kind of infamous for that, aren't they?
Hey, but
Oh
at
well.
least we ruined Cleveland.
Yeah, we ruined Cleveland, and LeBron left, and now here we are. It's an open runway now. So it worked out. Good work. Danny Ainge was ahead of his time. Um, so moving after this, the top 5 picks, we have a massive bust. I actually don't know if I've ever even heard of this guy. Yi Leon. Le, Yi. Hold on. Let me
Wait,
pronounce this now like an idiot.
where's this guy from? You
Where do
mean
you think? Where do you think? I said Yi. You said where? He wasn't born in fucking Mexico. I'll tell you that. Yi Leon. That guy. Haven't
sounds
heard from
South
him recently.
African?
South African. I will say he is easily the tannest Asian I've ever seen in my life. So maybe. Yeah, he played 5 seasons, was out of the league by 2012, did nothing in the league. Probably like outside of Greg Oden's more of a sad bust story. Like his body fell apart. This guy is genuinely like, who the fuck like the Milwaukee Bucks? What were you
What?
thinking?
But like we've had Jeremy Lin and Yao Ming and who else? Like honestly, that's on the Bucks. Like you're taking a massive gamble.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's like Jeremy Lin and Yao Ming are like the icons, but this
And
guy,
I'm
yeah,
a
it's a
numbers man, so like you want to talk about just numbers in the NBA? I would say the same thing if they drafted someone from Canada or Greenland. Be
Anthony Bennett.
like who what professional basketball player have we ever drafted from Greenland? Like why would you draft someone from Greenland? Like what are they going to do? Help you build an igloo in the locker room?
That's true. No, I feel like there's numbers to this game. Certain certain times, like for example, with basketball, like we're focusing in on China, right? We have Yao Ming, who is like an all-time great. We have Jeremy Lin, who's like folklore, like Jeff Green. Name another player. Go ahead. You can't do it. Ultimately, if you suck, you go to China.
What about Paul
So
George?
Paul George is going to play in China next year at the rate he's going.
He's no Josh Smith though. Josh Smith was a legend in China.
Yeah, no Jimmer Fredette for him. But continuing on with the Florida gang, Corey Brewer goes 7th overall. He's another guy that was just like a good role player in the league, bounced around, played for a million teams. Good
Yeah.
grid player, mind you, or hoops grid if you're into that as well. Just played for a million teams. I think he played for 8 teams in his career. So
Yeah.
if you do the grids, you know Corey Brewer ultimately.
Speaking of Corey Brewer, he was like it was like that was the team that came back from being down 3-1 to the Clippers, and I think it was Corey Brewer and Josh Smith went crazy when Harden was on the bench, and then it brought Houston back. and then they ended up going to the conference championship, and that was supposed to be Warriors Clippers in the conference championship, and it ended up being Rockets and Warriors. I think it was Corey Brewer and Josh Smith were the players who brought them back.
Was that the 2015 team?
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah, because they blew. Yeah, and then they lost to the Warriors in 5. But that was
because that
the
was the
Dwight
year
Howard.
supposed to be like Lob City versus Cleveland and Kyrie and LeBron.
I'm
That would
so
have been
glad that didn't
terrible.
happen.
They would
That
have
would have been
swept the
awful.
Clippers. Chris Paul would have pulled his hamstring, and then Blake Griffin literally can't do anything against LeBron James.
They would have found a way to win that series in 3. I'm not kidding. There would have been a way. But no, that was an interesting team. Trevor Ariza, Pat Bev. That was fun. And then another bust, or at least a guy that I've never actually really heard of, Brandon Wright. I don't remember this player at all, but just a role player. Played for a million teams. Another good grid player. This is a good draft for grids, to be honest. And then the last of the Florida gang. So that Florida team that won the championship, 3 of the top 9 picks were the Florida players. So well deserved. Joakim Noah at number 9, legend of the game.
Yeah, he was a legend, but unfortunately, he played for Tom Thibodeau, and then Tom Thibodeau had a saw here, and he's like, "Oh, those are some nice knees you had. It'd be terrible if I just ground them out until it's just matter floating around there." Because I did it to Derrick Rose, I'm doing it to Josh Hart and the Knicks right now, and then I did it to Joakim Noah, and then he's out of the league at this point in his career. Like the only person who ever survived Tom Thibodeau was Taj Gibson.
Yeah, but
That's
Taj
it.
Gibson's like another guy who's like folklore. Taj Gibson, when was he drafted? Like 2000, like 1994. That dude's been playing. I swear to God, he has like a fake ID because it might say on his ID that he's 38, but he's actually like 78. He
Yeah.
looks like he's 78. Like Taj Gibson is not what he says he is. He is a guy that we're gonna come out years down the line and say, actually, I wasn't actually 34 here. I was 74. That's Taj Gibson. He's an old man.
He's a vampire.
He's a vamp. But it's interesting you say that about Joakim Noah because the last 5 years of his career, after 8 seasons of Tom Thibodeau, guess how many games he played the last 5 years of his career?
35.
Close, 100. Over the course of 5 years, he never played more than 46 games. He had multiple seasons where he played like 5, and that was the end of his career. He fizzled out,
And
which
he's
was a
like on the
shame.
Knicks too, right?
Yeah, he was on the Knicks as well. I think that was the Phil Jackson era, but I might be wrong.
He's like the Derrick Rose Knicks too, and they're like, we're gonna bring in Derrick Rose to pair with Carmelo and Joakim Noah. It's like
Yeah.
the Knicks' last like attempt at building a team around Carmelo, and then he drifted off to Portland or Denver, and then
OKC. You hate to see it. Last of the to finish out the top 10, we have Spencer Hawes, who just a role player guy.
no, that's a name.
Spencer Hawes. That's a guy that you forget about. This is the guy that when you're on the porch after a long night of drinking and you guys are just naming random players, Spencer Hawes comes up from time to time. I remember him. I don't even know if I actually remember this guy. I might actually be lying when I say this, but I think of him on the Sixers when they were really, really bad.
Yeah,
That's not usually a good thing when I think about a bad team and like,
he's
oh, that guy that really sucked was on that team too.
he's that era's our version of like Frank Kaminsky.
Yeah, pretty much. He was out so quick too. It was like in and out, and
Where
that's
was
the end.
he? Where did he play? Let me guess. Gonzaga,
Uh, Washington. He's a Washington
Washington,
guy.
Washington State, or Washington.
Seattle, Washington.
Okay,
Yeah, just a Seattle guy. It's a shame that he couldn't play for the Supersonics while they were there. Hate to see it. But Spencer
oh yeah,
Hawes ends
the
the top 10
Supersonics.
picks.
Oh, they missed out on Spencer Hawes playing for the hometown. I mean, good
Him
God.
or KD? That's the real question.
Spencer Hawes or KD? I don't
It
know.
could have been fun.
KD's kind of toxic. No drama with Spencer Hawes. He's quarterback you.
Okay, coward. But what's interesting about this top 10 is I feel like majority of these guys ended up having decent careers. Like I'm looking here, there was only two of these guys that didn't play more than 10 years. Spencer Hawes played apparently for 10 years. I wouldn't have known, but we had 8 of the 10 players. I feel like that's a record because usually when we go through these drafts, we have like the Darko Milicic of the world, we have the Hashim Thabits, we have the Anthony Bennett's, like guys who just fizzle out immediately. And I feel like some drafts there's more of those guys than anybody else. But the fact that the first 10 picks are 10-year veterans at the minimum for the most part, and then we have some guys like Kevin Durant and Al Horford who could play for 20 years potentially. That's amazing. I feel like
Yeah, no, this draft's incredible. And then, are there any other hidden gems in this draft, or is the top 10 really solid and kind of fizzles out? Or
no,
who else do we
actually
have for notable players?
we have some great role players. One guy, another ageless legend, a guy who is still playing, I believe. Good old Thaddeus Young, 2K legend. Yeah, Thaddeus Young, 12th overall pick. This guy, if you remember the old vintage 2K days, you remember Thaddeus Young. Thaddeus Young was a legend. He's a 2K legend. He's an ordinary legend. He's played for a million teams. He's always pretty formidable. And now he's just kind of bouncing around the league. Last time we saw him was on the Suns, I believe. I think he played for the Suns, which
Yeah,
given this iteration, that's not surprising. But Thaddeus Young. And then 15th overall. How about good old Rodney Stuckey? You remember Rodney
I
Stuckey?
remember. I've seen. Yeah, I saw him when he played for Detroit. That was actually my first NBA game. I saw Rodney Stuckey. It was him, Brandon Jennings, Moose Monroe, and Andre Drummond and Tayshaun Prince. And that was like the Paul Pierce Rondo. I think Kevin Garnett was supposed to play, but he was injured. So it was like Garnett's last year with the Celtics. But I
Oh,
do
nice.
remember Rodney Stuckey.
We remember him well. But the question is, do you remember him as much as Iggy Azalea's boyfriend, Swaggy P, Nick Young? Nick Young?
Damn, he's that old?
Nick Young is an old man. It's funny. I think about Nick Young for two reasons. I think about him, one, because he dated Iggy Azalea at the peak of Iggy Azalea's career, which was just the one year that she released Fancy. And then him shooting the shot with the Lakers, looking away, and then it misses. That's
Yeah,
what I
I
think
remember
about with
that.
Nick Young. The Lakers team, like right
Wait,
before LeBron joined, and in the middle of like Kobe Bryant, like the end of Kobe Bryant's career, is just having a bunch of Nick Youngs on the team.
what? How old was he when he was drafted? Was he one and done?
I don't know. He was played at USC. I think he was one and done. He's 39 now, which
D'Angelo, you ratted out an old man. What the hell were you thinking? That makes that whole scandal worse. I thought they were both like young and dumb, but you ratted out a grown man and recorded your teammate, and then you
what
ratted like.
what
Do you
happened again?
remember that?
I
D'Angelo Russell recorded Nick Young talking about cheating on Iggy Azalea, and then it leaked. And then that's why they had to trade D'Angelo Russell, and that's why D'Angelo Russell like gets shaded around the league because he's a snitch.
I forgot
But
that that
he
happened, to be
snitched on
honest.
an old man. Bro was drafted in 2007, and like, bro, come on, man, that's not cool. That makes it so much worse because I was pretty young when that happened, so I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. And then you still like have that younger mentality of that specific subject, and you're like, oh my god, it's so much worse. But then bro was like in his 30s, and you're
He
like,
was in
what's
his
going?
30s.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was in his 30s when that happened. This is like if a young rapper bullied Two Chains. Because Two Chains is old as fuck and was born old as fuck immediately.
that's like the Apollo G bullied Two Chains or Rick
Yeah,
Ross.
yeah, exactly. It's like leave them alone, dude. They're fucking retired. Let them smoke their cigar in peace. Goddamn.
Be like if the baby was just going at Snoop Dogg, like, chill out,
Yeah, leave them alone.
leave
No,
him
it's nuts.
alone.
But Swaggy P, he was the 15th pick, so we're out of the lottery now. And then some notable pulls from this first round as well. How about 18th overall pick Marco Bellinelli, one of the coolest names in this draft?
Bro, this draft is sick. I remember him winning a didn't he? He won a championship with the Spurs, I believe, and he was like one of those players that got crazy hot versus the Heat when they would play.
Yeah,
But
he's the guy that he's part of the reason why the Spurs won the second time meeting up with them
it was
because it
him
was
and
like
Gary
him.
Neal.
Yeah, and then I remember Kawhi went parabolic. That was like the a surgence of Kawhi Leonard as well because he won the Finals MVP. But yeah, Marco
Yeah.
Bellinelli, another legend of the game. This list, and believe it or not, there's actually way more that we're not even done the first round. How about 22nd overall pick Jared Dudley, podcast king,
Jared Dudley.
another legend of the game. Yep.
Honestly, Jared Dudley, like I love Jared
20.
Dudley as a player, but he's one of those players I look at and I'm just like I'm angry and I don't know why.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think when I think of Jared Dudley, it reminds me of when the Lakers first got LeBron, and every year they would have just him and Anthony Davis, and then they would just sign mid-level exception players, and Jared Dudley was always one of those guys.
Yep.
You know, like
He
it
was a
just
mid-level exception king.
he was. If you played the game, if you played 2K, you remember them fondly. Wilson Chandler was immediately after, another guy that played for a long time. Aaron Brooks.
He's
He,
He was in the Paul Pierce trade with the Nets, actually, I think. Or is that
yeah,
Marshawn Brooks? That was a
that's
different
Marshawn
one.
Brooks. And then the last real like notable player to mention in the first round is another guy, cool name. How about Tiago Splitter?
Yeah, I remember him. He was like one of the last centers drafted that was only did two things.
Yeah, I just remember the rants that like vintage Stephen A would do on First Take about Tiago Splitter. I don't know what Tiago Splitter did to him. I don't know if he called him out on the NBA court or he made fun of Tiago Splitter's son or something. But him and Tiago Splitter had beef before LeBron and Stephen A did.
Yeah, it's whatever Jerry Judy did to you. That's what happened.
Yeah, it's the vendetta. It's like when you say Josh Allen 3 times among Marcus's bedroom and he freaks out.
What happened with Josh Allen?
I don't know. He's a guy that you hate. But second round, there's another couple of lists of like iconic second round players in this draft too. We have at 35 a guy that's packaged in the Ray Allen trade, Big Baby Davis, drafted by the
Isn't he in
Supersonics.
jail now?
Yeah, what did he do? I forgot what he did. I believe
Fraud.
he like
Same
committed
thing Brett
fraud.
Favre did, but he went to jail because he's not Brett Favre.
Yeah. What did he do? He he got cut. Oh, okay, wait, no, 2021. Oh yeah, he committed healthcare fraud. He also got caught in 2018 with 126 grams of marijuana, which is it's showing the. I'm looking on Wikipedia. It shows in February 7th, 2018, was caught with a drug possession, 126 grams of marijuana, equivalent to 6 packs of cigarettes, and
What?
then a briefcase containing $92,000 cash. If this happened now, he wouldn't have gone to jail for that. And then this other thing, he
That's not
just
true.
committed
Big
healthcare
X the
fraud.
plug just went for jail for that in Arlington.
Really?
Yeah, they arrested him for weed, but like, oh no, they arrested him for weed. What are they gonna do? What's he gonna do? Take a nap with all that weed? Oh no, we better stop him from having really good sleep, and maybe he'll eat too much.
Yeah.
Maybe they're
Taco
like, you
Bell's
can't
gonna.
have that much weed. You'll eat too much. You'll get diabetes with Big Baby Davis. I don't know.
I don't know. And then 2021, him and 18 other NBA players. I guess there's other players in on this, but
That was a
committed
big
healthcare
scandal.
fraud. Yeah,
It
defrauding
was like the
NBA's top.
same time as like the Brett Favre stuff was coming out too.
Yeah, because he's spending 40 years in prison, but I guess it was in regards to the NBA's healthcare plan that they were taking advantage of. So they were kind of
Yeah,
sticking it to the NBA, which I didn't know that. Which I guess
yeah, because
doesn't make
like
it any better. But
I remember seeing him on like this past weekend when it was still like a pretty young show with Theo Vaughn, and then the next time I saw him in the news, he was going to jail for healthcare fraud. I was like, oh,
damn,
good
you know what
basketball
they
play
say: the
though.
higher they climb, the harder they fall. Unfortunate to see. Last couple of players to shout out: Marc Gasol, 48th overall pick. He was packaged in the deal that ultimately landed Pau Gasol for the Lakers. So they drafted him, and then ultimately Pau Gasol's like, hell yeah, I'm going to pair up with my brother Marc Gasol. And it's like, actually, Marc Gasol is going to the Grizzlies, but maybe next time. Pau, yeah, Marc Gasol. I know he won with the Raptors, but Another really nice, solid player. Um, three-time
Yeah.
All-Star. And
This
then
is like this is like if Thanasis was good and they traded Giannis for Thanasis.
pretty much. And I think that trade also had like Kwame Brown, who's like infamously one of the worst players ever. That trade,
Yeah.
the Lakers always find a way to just find a really dumb team to ruin their franchise.
I
And that's
feel like it
basically
worked
what they
out
do.
for both teams though. Marcus Saul was a really good player
Yeah.
for them, and then they also got Mike Conley. So like him and Powell were at different points in their career with what both franchises were doing, and then he ends up winning a ring with the Raptors, and he's part of that stacked team with Kawhi there, OG Anunoby, Pascal, Fred Van Vliet, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah. Marcus Gasol, I mean, that trade, I think the Lakers definitely won that trade, but Marcus Gasol, it took him a while to kind of ascend, but I remember those Grizzly eras. That team was really good. He won Defensive Player of the Year with them. And then when he did finally move on, he won a ring. So he had a successful NBA career. Um, you know, all-star
Yeah.
multiple times. And
I
then
don't really
so
know if like the Grizzlies would be too different though, like with Pow versus like Marcus Gasol.
no, I feel like Mark was just bigger. Like he was more of like a traditional big man, where Powell was more of like a power forward figure. But either way, I'm glad that trade happened though, because. But the other question I would be like, how much better like would the Lakers have still won a title with Marc Gasol rather than Pau Gasol?
Well,
Because
he
that
was
team,
young then, right? So because he was coming into the NBA younger, so Powell was more ready to win, and then Mark was there to be paired with Mike Conley, who they just drafted that year. So they got two young players that could grow together.
yeah, ended up working out for both of them. Um, but ending this elite, probably looking at this draft through and through, I can say this is maybe my favorite draft to talk about so far. And this includes the NBA. Last player to shout out,
Great.
veteran Ramon Sessions. Hey,
Some of these names,
56th,
bro, in this draft.
56th overall pick, played a decade in the league, last seen in 2018. But this dude played for like 12 years. And I think of him fondly with the Cavaliers. But um, Ramon Sessions, another guy who, just one of those guys that I just loved in the NBA. Like 2K12 thrived with Ramon Sessions.
Yeah, it did.
Great times, honest to God.
But
But
Cleveland drafted him.
no, Milwaukee did. And then they
Milwaukee.
eventually traded him to Cleveland.
Gotcha. Who did they trade him for?
I'll look. But that was he joined the Cavaliers like basically when LeBron like decimated the Cavaliers and they were just god awful. Oh, they traded him with Ryan Hollins for Delonte West.
Uh,
Yeah.
oh, he was.
It, it's
Oh, he helped get the motherfucker literally out of Cleveland.
yeah. Yeah, he traded the
Jesus.
motherfucker. Yeah, he was a part of that trade. And then Sebastian Telfair. But yeah, basically Ramon Sessions for Delonte West. Honestly, I would take Ramon Sessions, but Delonte West has a special place in NBA history.
No, he has a special place in NBA history. And this
I think pop
draft
culture history.
definitely has a special place in NBA history too. Like I feel like this is the ultimate grid draft. Like this may be the greatest draft of all time. You have Kevin Durant, you have Al Horford, and there's probably players with like more stars overall, but this draft has a lot of depth, a lot of good role players, a lot of good intangible players. Kevin Durant, one of the best scorers of all time. Al Horford, Mike Conley.
Yeah, this draft, like, I feel like there was even some players that I might have skipped over that didn't, that might have deserved a shout. You know, the Wilson Chandlers of the world, the Aaron Afalos, but like through and through, like you have Hall of Famers like Kevin Durant, Al Horford. Then you have some really solid players like Mike Conley. But then you get the Marco Bellinellis, you get Swaggy P, you get players that like they don't define the 2010s, but when you talk about 2010s basketball, these are players that you'll see in a highlight reel potentially, like Swaggy P.
Yeah. No, you'll see Swaggy P on a highlight reel for sure. Whether it's on the hub or in the NBA, you'll see him somewhere.
Yeah, and hopefully D'Angelo Russell is nowhere near him whenever that happens. But NBA history was formed on that faithful night in June 28th of 2027 or 2007. I mean, but we have history that's forming slowly in the NBA this next couple of weeks. We have this last week of NBA regular season. Then we have the play-in tournament next Friday, and then the NBA playoffs, where legacies are determined ultimately. Will the Celtics win their second ring in a row? Will we see Luka Doncic get his first ring? The Thunder, will they make their noise? NBA playoffs are nearly upon us as we preview.
Yeah, so next Tuesday the play-in tournament starts, and it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I believe it's over by Friday. Typically, the winners of the play-in tournament end up playing on Sunday here. So it will be interesting to see there. But we have history being made this season because there is one important fact in history to consider. You know what that fact is?
What is it?
That no NBA team has ever won a championship with an interim head coach. And this season, the firings in the middle of the season for head coaches are crazy. So we have Taylor Jenkins get fired, and then out of nowhere, the news drops with 4 games left in the regular season, with 6 teams locked in a with 2 games separating them with 4 games left. You fire Mike Malone, you file the general manager, and the owner says, well, guys, go out there and just have fun, and hopefully this will all motivate you. And he puts on his smug corporate conference, and then the Nuggets are kind of just sitting there with their fans shocked, where this guy has won a championship last year, and now only 2 of the last 6 NBA champions are still coaching today: Steve Kerr, Joe Mazzulla. Everyone else fired. Of the last 6 NBA champions, gone.
That's bizarre to me. Yeah, you're right. Because Nick Nurse, we have Mike Malone,
Frank
that
Vogel.
and Frank Vogel. That's insane. But what I don't understand about the Nuggets, so like the Grizzlies, Taylor Jenkins had been there a while. There wasn't a lot of success. I don't agree with them firing him midseason, but Taylor Jenkins made more sense to me, even though I think he's a good coach. Mike Malone came out of nowhere. I remember the news dropped. I'm like, why are they firing Mike Malone again? Is this team not in title contention? I get that this team this season is extremely Joker reliant, and without him, they're a bottom 10 team statistically. But at the same time, like this team could still very much contend, make the Western Conference Finals, potentially make the finals this year. Explain to me, as if I'm a moron, why would they fire Mike Malone exactly? Does it make any sense? Because I don't get it.
Yeah, so with Mike Malone getting fired, so he gets fired, and then a video surfaces of him 2 weeks ago in a press conference talking about players aren't watching film. They're not getting their minutes in here, and basically calling out his players for being lazy and slacking off. So it's like players aren't watching film. It's been a sloppier product. And then the Nuggets were also on a skid where they've lost a couple games in a row now and a couple big games, and Joker really has to do anything. So you're also looking at the Nuggets sets now where every single play for Michael Porter runs through Jokic. Every play for Jamal Murray runs through Jokic. So every play for Aaron Gordon also runs for Jokic. It's like there's nothing set up off of the ball for Jokic, so you could point to that. But it's bizarre that you do it with 4 games left in the season. You know, you have to at least give him one more playoff run, and he won a championship a year ago. And if you look at the San Antonio Spurs, can you tell me the time that the San Antonio Spurs won back-to-back championships? Like, please tell me when. When did they do that? They won 5 rings, but they never won back-to-back championships, I believe, for San
No,
Antonio.
no, they were always spread out, but I don't understand. Like, even though, like, I understand there might be like a rift between him and his players, but firing them right before the playoffs, like, what message does that send to the team? What message does that send to the fans? Like, to me, the Nuggets for me go from a team that was in the conversation for the title ultimately, like title contenders, to like there's something seriously wrong within that organization. They fired their GM shortly after too, so they're basically going to be retooling, rebooting, whatever they might end up doing. But this Nuggets team goes from like title contention to what's going on in Denver. I genuinely am baffled by this firing ultimately.
Yeah, no, it's definitely confusing. And like with Mike Malone, I think is a good coach. So it had to be something going on with him and the players. And like, I don't know enough to speculate. A lot of people jump to like, oh yeah, it's Michael Porter, obviously not watching film, but it's also probably Russell Westbrook here, not watching film. Maybe it's an issue with like Jamal Murray. Like, we can't speculate, and like, not enough information has come out. It's just bizarre. And it really does take the Nuggets out of title contention, and they said the reason why they fired the GM and the coach was to give the team a spark. But how about this? You know what a better spark for your team would be? Spending your money wisely. So you want to talk about the fifth highest paid player on your team is averaging 3 points a game and 4 points for his career. The only players who make more than him are the big four on that team: Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. And then you have this bum on your bench eating up your salary cap, and he was the reason why you couldn't bring back Contavious Caldwell Pope and Bruce Brown, who are two of the most important players on that championship run. And then they're the two biggest players that left this big hole because you don't have a bench and you can't shoot threes, which is the biggest problem with Denver, and is probably why they're not going to win a championship this year. Because right now, it's looking like Jokic might burn out during the regular season. Can he go on a LeBron James-esque run and carry this team to the finals? I'm not going to rule it out, but I'd give it like a 25% shot. Where if Mike Malone was still there, maybe you give him a 40% shot. So, like, for me, you lose at like 15-20% odds of like going to there, and then suddenly also Jokic's odds of playing with the Lakers next year goes up.
Jokic's? Oh my God! Don't even say that. That's a tease. No, like for me, what I don't understand is you mentioned the statistic about how there's never been an assistant head coach that wins the NBA Finals. For me, I'm looking at the matchups. Like you have Steve Kerr that you'll have to face off against. You have Emi Udoka. You have JJ Redick and Tyronn Lue. All of these head coaches are deserving of their acclaim. They deserve to be recognized as some of the better coaches in the league. And you're going to match up against them with a guy who maybe has never coached before. I forgot who they named as like the interim head coach, but I don't understand this
Jokic,
from an
that's who.
optics. Pretty much, yeah. They have. They don't even tell me. Like I'm trying to look up who they have their interim head coach as, but Dave Adelman. Oh God. Okay. So ultimately, they fire him, a head coach that won the title just 2 years ago. They made it to the semifinals last year and was pushed to a game 7 from the Timberwolves, one game away from making the conference finals after winning the title. And they would have faced Dallas. Who would have known what would have happened there? And you fire him the following season before the season's even over. Like, optic wise, it just makes no sense. And I guess we could say the same for Taylor Jenkins, but I think Mike Malone's a lot more severe in my mind, like firing him so early.
And it's the West right now is wide open, and Jamal Murray in the regular season and the playoffs is a different player, and maybe Jamal Murray is a older uh player than like his age would maybe be because of his injuries in the past, but like Jamal Murray is still one of the best playoff performers here. And then you have Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon. So it's like you have a shot to go out there and win an NBA championship, especially if you match up with the Thunder team where they swallow the whistle against SGA here. Maybe you don't have enough perimeter defense or shooting, but I give you a shot to go up against Houston in LA. You have a puncher's chance in every series, but without Mike Malone, no. Like, you're gonna go up against Ime Udoka and Tyronn Lue. They're just gonna tear right through that coach, and it's gonna all be on Jokic. He's gonna average a ton of points, and he's just not gonna have enough help off the bench. And I don't know. He might just kind of burn out and get tired in the playoffs. Like, you can't go out there without your coach. And people responded with, well, Tyronn Lue was actually an interim head coach, but he was promoted in January and given the head coaching position full time because he was LeBron James's guy, and LeBron never wanted David Blatt.
Yeah, and plus also I think like Tyronn Lue has a lot more like NBA pedigree. He played in the league. He had a bunch of coaching experience. I believe he stopped playing basketball in 2004, and he had like 12 years of experience where he was coaching, whether it be an assistant role or in other places. Like he had experience. The head coach that they have now for the Nuggets is Dave Adelman, who does have experience across the NBA. Like he, is the assistant for the Magic. He's been with the Nuggets organization for a long time. But first time head coach is a real thing. I think even JJ Redick, who's been super successful this year, maybe coach of the year potentially, I think he would even agree that there's an adjustment when it comes to being a head coach and what it demands. And rather than doing that in November and making those adjustments like JJ Redick's had to do over the last 82 games, he's going to have to do that against the best competition in the NBA and with head coaches that are smarter than him because they have more experience. I mean, Udoka, great head coach. Steve Kerr, champion. You get the idea. Like, he has to make all these adjustments as a first time head coach in the playoffs, which I don't think is fair to Dave Adelman at all. As a guy who's going to basically come in, have 6 games to learn how to coach, and then be forced to go on a title run with a team that is just in complete dysfunction, it feels like, especially after the GM and the head coach is gone.
Yeah, no, the GM, like, I feel like you should have fired the GM, not the head coach. But, like, the fact that you do this right in the middle of the season, it just doesn't make sense. It was like when they fired Brandon Staley, too. Like, you knew they had to fire Brandon Staley at some point, but, like, he didn't get to and win a Super Bowl like Mike Malone got to and won a championship. So, like, this doesn't really give me confidence right now in Denver and their chances in the playoffs. But I think ultimately, do you think this is a sign that maybe Denver might just be a one and done team similar to Milwaukee and not get back to the NBA finals? And Milwaukee might, but I don't think anyone think like is betting on them too.
Yeah, I don't have faith in the Bucks, but the Nuggets, it's a shame because I do think that they're going to ultimately take a step back. I don't think they're going to find a coach like Mike Malone that they can replace and plug in. Plus we have Joker who has had a lot, he's had a lot of touches this year. He is older than people remember. I believe Nikola Jokic is 31 at this point, which
No, he's
I'm not.
29
He's 29.
or
He's
30.
30 now. He just turned
Yeah.
30. But either way, he's entering his 30s. He's touched the ball a lot. He's had a lot of wear and tear over the last 4 seasons. He's a 3-time MVP, about to be a 4-time MVP. And then also, like, looking at the rest of that team, like, Jamal Murray's a really nice player, but is he a solid number two for someone like Joker? Can we pair Joker with someone like a Luka Doncic? Maybe not quite to that same level, but can we get him like another superstar? Jamal Murray's a really nice player. Is he going to be the guy that gets him over the hump ultimately? We don't know. And then Michael Porter Jr. has been inconsistent. Their role players have gotten a lot worse. Russell Westbrook is not going to help them get to the promised land either, as he's been one of the most inefficient players maybe ever. But also, especially since the post Kevin Durant era. So, like, I just feel like this team is ultimately deteriorating. And ultimately, if I'm Joker, a guy who really only needs one more ring to be in the GOAT conversation, as far as I'm concerned, at least for big men, he's got to look at another place potentially to team up with somebody and win one more ring. Because he really, like, one more ring with Joker, and he can go down as a top 5 player all time, potentially, at least top 10.
Yeah, for sure. No, him and Anthony Edwards will definitely pair up in Miami for sure.
I'm down for that. You
Pat
think
right.
Joker would want to go to Miami, though?
No, I don't know where Joker would want to go because, like, I feel like Denver's a good fit for him, because Denver has kind of that cowboy culture, at least horse wise, where you kind of do have that environment. So I feel like he would definitely fit there. If you're looking at a team that's a contender in the West, that he could potentially go to, and maybe they trade for him, I would say Houston would be the dark horse team that no one would think of, but you pair him with Ime Udoka and a team full of scrappy defenders with like Dylan Brooks. If you can keep, maybe you have to trade Alfred Sengun, but if you're trading for Jokic, that's worth it. If you can keep Amon Thomas here and Jaden Daniels
Yeah, the
or
Rockets.
Jalen Green.
Yeah, honestly, the Rockets have a lot of picks. They have a lot of really young players. If I'm a
Yeah,
Nuggets team, you're never going to get the right exact perfect package for Joker. But if ultimately he wants to move on, he doesn't want to go through a rebuild. The Rockets do make a lot of sense. I think that's a good pairing.
yeah,
I don't know
three first
why.
round picks, Alfred Sengun and uh um Fred Van Vliet, and then they take on his contract there to make the money work because they're paying him a lot of money. Then you throw in another role player there. Maybe the Rockets get Christian Braun back as well in that deal. I feel like that's a trade where if you're Denver, okay, we get another guard who can score here, so we get some more depth on the wing, and then we get another skilled big man where maybe he's not to the level of Jokic, but we also get like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 first round picks back. I feel like that's a good trade.
That's a good trade. I do think when I look at Joker, like where he could play, Rockets make sense. If we're looking out east, like maybe there's a deal where Joker, ultimately Giannis is unhappy in Milwaukee, Denver. Joker wants to leave. They make a trade where he goes to Milwaukee, Giannis goes to Denver. I feel like that trade almost just seems too fairy tale, but it is a fun one to float around. How that would impact the Bucks. I feel like
I
Joker would make the
feel
Bucks better.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be more like Carl Anthony Towns for Jokic from the Knicks. I feel like the wet dream for the NBA would be Jokic on the Knicks with Jalen Brunson, but they'd probably have to fire Thibodeau because
What
that
about the
just
Pistons? The Pistons could be fun. I
Detroit.
just don't.
I don't want to wish that on him.
I honestly think another team that I've looked at, but they don't have nearly enough capital to make this happen because they made a very dumb trade. But the Timberwolves. I'm just picturing not so much teams, but destinations that make sense for him. Denver makes sense because it's a big city, but it is in the woods. Minnesota, outside of Minnesota, what the fuck is in Minnesota? I don't know.
Ten
What?
thousand lakes,
Oh, right. 10,000 lakes. But I
and they
feel
have a
like
roller
that's a
coaster
better.
in a mall.
That's that sounds very Midwest. But that's good for them. I feel like Minnesota as a city makes more sense for him than going to a place like New York or Houston or these other places. I just don't. He's unlike most superstars, so it's hard for me to say like where he would want to go. I feel like he'd want to go more like to a place like Milwaukee or Indiana or Minnesota, like places like that are more off the grid.
Yeah, I mean, do you think this whole Lakers are the favorite to land Jokic next season is like bullshit? Because like, who are they gonna trade for Jokic? Because LeBron would probably retire to make the contracts work, and then what are you gonna trade Austin Reeves for Jokic?
That's the thing. The Lakers, and what sucks about Lakers fans is that it works out for them. So they always can have this delusion, but Lakers fans are the most delusional fans in pro sports because the Kobe Bryant trade ruined them. They're like, "Oh, we can trade some bum off the street Vlade Divac for Kobe Bean Bryant. We can trade for Pau Gasol for Kwame Brown, and it works somehow." And then this past trade where they trade for Luka Doncic, a guy who you could argue is the best in the league, at least a top 5 player in the league, for Anthony Davis, who is on the downside of his career, who's already played 13 years and has been injury prone. They've had multiple trades. And I'm sure if I went back to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's era, we could look at that trade as another trade that they fleeced. The Lakers have had a long list of history of fleecing teams for really dumb, what look back historically as really dumb trades. But what happens with that is you have the Taylor Horton Tuckers that get floated around like they're a luxury piece. Back when they were trying to get Paul George, you have, I love Austin Reeves, great player. Is he worth Joker? Absolutely not. You're not going to get Nikola Jokic to join the Lakers for Austin Reeves. I don't care how good Austin Reeves is. I don't care how many picks you have. I don't care if you give the second coming of Christ. You're not going to get Joker on the Lakers ultimately for Austin Reeves. It's not going to
Nah,
happen.
man, those California people would just be like, well, hey man, if you like put Dalton Neck, Rui Hachimura, and Austin Reeves together, they basically make up Jokic, and we'll give them like maybe like a pick swap or something, dude.
No, unfortunately, the NBA is not Moneyball. That works in baseball when you're trying to replace Johnny Damon, but when you're trying to replace
Or you
a
don't have a
potential,
cap.
or you don't have a cap, that also plays a part. But like replacing Johnny Damon and replacing 4 of the last 5 MVP winners in Joker, a guy that's won a title, a guy that really only needs one more title to be in the GOAT conversation, um, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But Lakers fans, unfortunately, have been spoiled for 70 years with stupid trades from other organizations that have decimated NBA history and has made it
What do you
Lakers Nation
mean we
ultimately.
didn't get Chris Paul? They vetoed it, man. That league's out to get us.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, yeah, no. The NBA has some sort of alliance with the Lakers where every 10 to 15 years they call up a poverty franchise and say, "Hey, trade your best player for nothing or else." And this, I don't know why this keeps happening. The Luka Doncic trade continues a long history of stupid trades that benefited the Lakers greatly. I swear to God, we could have an hour-long segment on these type of trades. They traded Pau Gasol for Kwame. Well, they traded for Pau Gasol for Kwame Brown. That's what it turned into.
but But the NBA essentially, if there was an NBA version of a tariff, it would be the equivalent of the Lakers' Dwight Howard and Steve Nash team. Or better yet, every once in a while, the NBA will force the Lakers to just take on these bad contracts to even it out. So they suck for a period of time and then magically they get a star. But the Lakers got essentially tariffed with old Steve Nash and failing Dwight Howard where he was starting to decline. And then after that, you sign Luol Deng to one of the worst deals of all time. And then you also
Yeah.
sign Timothy Mozgov, I believe, also to one of the worst deals of all time.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened. Luol Deng, by the time he signed with the Lakers, half of the league forgot Luol Deng played still. Because Luol Deng was great with the like Derrick Rose era Bulls. We didn't really hear much from Luol Deng, and the next thing you know, it's like 2016, and he signs like $72 million with the Lakers. It baffled the world. And then I believe with Timothy Mozgov, they were in on some other big man that wasn't Timothy Mozgov that was in free agency at the time. Could have even been like a Kevin Durant, and they ended up signing Timothy Mozgov for like 100 million. It was disgusting how much money Timothy Mozgov made off of them.
Yeah, no, it was definitely robbery from Luol Deng, and then now Nuggets fans are getting robbed this year. Mavericks fans are getting robbed, and even to an extent, Grizzlies fans getting robbed here. And now we cruise into the NBA playoffs, and all we heard was there's too many super teams. We want competition. We want parity. Well, the NBA ratings are down when we have some of the best parity, and I feel like the entire West got better, and now so the essentially the Thunder are locked in at one. Houston pretty much has locked up the two seed at this point, but three all the way down to eight is two games separating the teams here. So we can go through, kind of break down those games here, and then kind of what would be the best outcome for each teams, and what teams will probably give the other ones the hardest problem here. But are you surprised that it's coming down to like the last four games here?
No, because ultimately, like when we entered the season, I knew that the Celtics were going to be really good. We knew the Thunder were going to be really good, and there was a couple other teams that like we were speculating were going to be really good. But otherwise, like we had our doubts with the Lakers, we had our doubts with the Nuggets, the Warriors. We had our doubts there. So I feel like I'm not surprised that it's ended up this way. I'm honestly more surprised that the East isn't more close as it is because I felt like it felt like going into the season that the East had relatively good parity outside of the Celtics being really good, the Cavaliers doing much better than I expected them to be. I feel like between like the Knicks and the Pacers and the Bucks time, I thought that they were going to be like a lot more interesting. Even with the Sixers, who we thought were going to be a lot better. Like I thought the East would be more competitive, but it's become the West, which I feel like historically is always how it's been.
Yeah, and like with the East, like it's easier to run through that real quick. Like Atlanta, I had like expectations for to get better. Orlando took a step back. They're kind of like one of those teams that got to the playoffs. They'll probably make it this year, but Chicago's pretty hot right now, so it's not a lock. So they're going to be in the play-in tournament though. And then surprise team though was Detroit, and we're probably going to have Detroit and New York in the first round here. New York kind of did exactly what I thought they would do in the regular season with Karl Anthony Towns kind of sliding that three seed.
Yeah.
Philadelphia, I didn't expect them to be this bad. I thought they were just going to be their usual second round, first round exit, disappointing selves in the playoffs. But like, I feel like they had the Phoenix Suns type of meltdown in the East. I feel like Phoenix and Philadelphia are probably the two most disappointing teams this
Yeah,
year, and I can justify any other team's disappointment.
yeah, no, honestly, those are great comparisons because the Sixers, like, they replace James Harden with Chris Paul. I'm no, with Paul George, I mean. And then their team basically, it's not just the fact that their team fell apart, it's the way they fall apart. Joel Embiid was out for most of the season, and then Paul George was banged up. But even when they did play, they were just ass. Like they were just bad all around, bad defensively, couldn't get a bucket when they needed to. Ultimately, the only person that shined for the Sixers this year was Tyrese Maxey. And then on the Sun side, I mean, whose idea was it to trade for Bradley Beal? Nobody, like nobody was going to offer what the Suns offered for Bradley Beal. What was ended up being like what 5 first round picks and basically
Yeah.
their entire team. They constructed their team the way that the Lakers did the beginning of the LeBron era, where they just traded away all of their good rising players for like Russell Westbrook, players that aren't going to fulfill their title contention needs. And now the Suns have lost 7 straight. You want to talk about how Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins got fired prematurely? Mike Budenholzer, the fact that he has not been fired is baffling to me. 7 consecutive losses. This team, massive failure expectations wise. Like, yeah, the Sixers and Suns are easily the most disappointing teams this year.
Bro, he's not even in the playoffs. You can fire him. It's fine. If you're gonna make the playoffs, don't fire your coach. What like it's like what are you thinking if you're Memphis or Denver? Just wait until they lose in the NBA playoffs and it's like fine, we can justify that 2 years. Maybe Denver has a disappointing first round exit and Golden State beats them in the first round or they lose to LA for the first time in a couple years here and that series gets evened up. Like that makes sense. Taylor Jenkins, another disappointing first round exit. That makes sense. But Budenholzer hasn't been fired here. And then also the 76ers head coach, same vein, hasn't been fired here. But
Nick
oh, yeah.
Nurse.
Yeah. Nick Nurse. And then Nick Nurse gets fired in Toronto, though, after winning a championship. Frank Vogel gets fired after winning a championship. Like, you look at all these other coaches who get fired, it's like, but Mike Budenholzer's still in Phoenix when it felt like Kevin Durant didn't even want him there. And then you traded for Bradley Beal, who has not only one of the worst contracts, the thing that makes his contract even worse, though, is you can't trade him because he has a no trade clause. So it's like he has a $50 million cap hit, but a no trade clause. So you can't get rid of that cap hit when he hasn't done anything at all for you.
That contract's a nightmare. And not only that, you are actually screwed because you have to trade one of these 3 players. You ideally want to keep Devin Booker if you can. Kevin Durant is probably the guy that's going to be traded this offseason, but ideally, if you can trade Bradley Beal, like, okay, things aren't looking so bad because he has at least one more year of his deal, Bradley Beal, and then he has a player option. He's not going to get $57 million anywhere else but Phoenix. So, of course, he's going to be there for the next 2 years. Why wouldn't he? The Suns also don't have a first round pick of their own choosing until 2032. By then, we will have not one, but potentially 2 new presidents by then. And we just got obviously 47th President Trump at this point, but we might have potentially 2 new presidents by the time that the Suns have control of their first round pick. That to
Yeah, it's
me,
going to be President AOC.
yeah, we'll see. But the Suns, like, the Suns are so fucked, it's not even funny because not only do they not have control of their first round picks, so even if they try to tank, they won't have the picks because somehow the fucking Wizards finesse them. And then ultimately, yeah, they have 3 contracts that make up 99% of their payroll. So they have to employ players like Bradley Beal or who did we mention in the 2007 draft? Like the Corey Brewers of the world or Spencer Hawes that we might potentially see. Like those are the guys who we're going to see on the Suns at some point.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel bad for Phoenix. And you know why I feel bad for Phoenix is because Phoenix ran into Chris Paul syndrome, which is Chris Paul has the great effect where if you want a traditional point guard, a floor general, guy who's going to be a leader on your team, he checks every box. But the problem with Chris Paul is he will get you as far as he can just barely take you. And then in the playoffs, he got you to the finals. He even got you a 2-0 lead in the NBA finals with him and Devin Booker playing a huge part in that, and Mikal Bridges, who helped play a huge part in that. And then DeAndre Ayton was just a solid player for you, so he's fine. But you had this Chris Paul syndrome of Chris Paul will make your team great and elevate your team in the regular season, but he really just can't get it done in the playoffs, and he hasn't been durable in the playoffs either. But you have to also figure out a way to make your team better at the same time. But as soon as Chris Paul left, he was really the one who elevated Devin Booker. Devin Booker's not the same player without Chris Paul. And then you bring in Kevin Durant, and then him, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal all kind of do the same thing. And this trade never really made sense. And it was more a move out of desperation than something that felt calculated and thought out, just because their owner is a new owner. He just recently bought the team and he wants to swing for the fences. Well, you swung for the fences, and now you're probably going to have to trade Devin Booker if you want any chance of rebuilding this team, because you don't have a first round pick until 2032. And then you're not going to get a wealth of first round picks for Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant probably has 2 years left playing at a high level, and he has been really solid, but he's not the same Kevin Durant. He's not going to command a lot of assets back for him. And then Bradley Beal's not going to command anything either. And then what's left? What's left? You're going to go out
Grayson
there and
Allen.
you're going to get a haul for Grayson Allen.
Yeah, no, I mean they're fucked. And what sucks is that Devin Booker, he's a guy that is a nice piece to build around. Not in the sense that I think that he's going to be the number one player, but he's a really formidable number two. I think if you're on a championship team and Devin Booker's your two, you're in a good spot. But the problem is that they traded for what felt like prime Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant's by no means like a bum player by any means. He's played great for them, but he's not the same Kevin Durant. He's 36. He's about to be 37. He's old. He's had a bunch of injuries, especially post Golden State. So you traded for a guy that you thought was going to be your one, and he wasn't. And then I don't know why you thought having three ball dominant players on your team to build a championship team was a smart idea. I don't know what you were thinking, especially because Bradley Beal's contract was bad in Washington. Like he had a bad contract then, too. He was just a scoring merchant. They should have traded for a big man looking back, or maybe kept DeAndre Ayton instead of trading for Bradley Beal. But ultimately, they made a lot of bad moves. Their new owner made some mistakes, and the only way that they can get out of it is if they could possibly just trade everybody. Trade Kevin Durant, trade Bradley Beal, and trade Devin Booker, and just restart a whole new chapter for the Suns, because they're fucked at this point.
Yeah, if you can get something from Orlando for Bradley Beal, if they're desperate, maybe the Timberwolves will be like, you know what? Why do we need our picks in 2035 and 2040? Why don't we just give them some first round picks 10 years down the line? It's not going to catch up to us. We'll give you a couple first round picks for Bradley Beal.
Yeah, they've become like the LA Rams essentially of the
And then
NBA.
like on the processes side, like I felt like if you're gonna trade Joel Embiid, last year was peak value. And Bill Belichick, what made him great was he always moved on from players a year too early. And I felt like if the Sixers got rid of Embiid last year, you probably could have got enough to build a really fun team around Tyrese Maxey and eventually a contender in the future. And then now he's having surgery on his knee again this offseason, and it kind of just feels like it's coming to a slow, painful end for Joel Embiid. Like it feels like the
Yeah.
next 3 to 4 years are going to be really tough. And then also, it's not necessarily Joel Embiid's fault. Like I don't know how much like his work ethic contributes to it, and like he's late to meetings constantly. Maybe that does play a part in it, but like just the grind of like rehab, and then you can't even get conditioned by the time you finish rehab. You have to start all over again. and you're not necessarily improving as a player if you're constantly just going through rehab. At some point, it has to wear on you mentally, where he's like, maybe I need to retire in the next 2 or 3 years here. And I feel like we might see that, unfortunately, because he's a great player.
Yeah, he is a great player, and ultimately, he let's not forget that the first 2 years of his career was from a knee injury. His knees have fallen apart. He said that he ultimately will never play a back to back again. Um, and in the last 2 years, he's played 50 games. Like he hasn't played, he's never played more than 68 games in a season. He's always been a guy that's been banged up. Um, and so, yeah, ultimately, like at this point, he's 30, but he's a really old 30. He's a 30 with a lot of wear on his tires. And at this point, like the way the Sixers are aligned right now, you have Paul George, who's clearly taken a step back. And
Like,
then,
who's
like,
trading for him too? Like, who's trading for Paul George? Like, where you're gonna get something that's gonna make a difference.
yeah, where like with Joel Embiid, I think that there's a team out there that would still make a good offer for Joel Embiid. They'd trade a few first round picks. They'd trade probably their best player for Joel Embiid still. Because when Joel Embiid does play, he is still one of the best players in the league. This year,
Yeah,
he was banged up all season, so we didn't really get to see, but he is not that far removed from the MVP season. So he's still one of the players in the league that if you team him up, like let's say back in Dallas before they made the Luka trade, if you would have paired him with Joel with ultimately with Luka Doncic, like that's a really exciting team at that point. And I'm sure there's maybe Anthony Edwards is the person he teams up with in Minnesota, but Joel Embiid, like
yeah,
you could still get value from him, but just not as much as you could have last year.
yeah. The rumors I've heard are is Charlotte trading for him
Mm,
to
okay,
pair
him
him
and
with LaMelo, and then you pair the two most injured stars in the league together. So the hope is at least one of them will be available.
I mean, it'd be fun, but is that team going to win anything? No. I like Lamelo a lot. I like Joel Embiid a lot, but yeah, like Joel Embiid's made it. He's played 50 games the last 2 years. Like it's not going to happen. Like you think that when it comes to like knee injuries, once you get to a certain level, your knees are never the same. I think even like with Steph, who has been healthy for the most part, his knees are by no means the same, especially the player that,
I,
maybe like
I
five
think he's
years ago.
older than Jokic too, right? I think he's like 33. Like, I feel like Embiid is a lot older than people realize. Like, people think he's like the same age as Tatum, but he's like, I think 4 or 5 years older.
Joel Embiid's 31 and
Yeah,
he turns 30. He actually just had his birthday last month, but he's 31 and but it's just like he's played like half of his games that he could possibly play in his career. He missed two of the first 2 years of his career. He was gone. He had like basically a Greg Oden arc at one point. He was actually deemed a bust initially because he was just hurt his entire first half of his career. Then once when he got healthy, obviously he's ascended since. He's been an all-star every year, but ultimately the first 3 years of his career, we thought he was a bust. He played 30 games the first 3 years of his career, ultimately. So he's an old 31, a really old 31. So, I mean, Charlotte would be fun, but again, they have to trade Joel Embiid. And then Paul George, like, good luck with that contract. Good luck with whoever wants to take that beast on because he just
that
signed that
tariff.
too.
Paul George
That,
is a tariff at this point too.
yeah, literally. I got to say, I love that term that's been thrown around. Calling Bradley Beal and Paul George a tariff is the new way of life in the NBA.
Honestly, it's a great way to explain a bad contract to someone. It's like a tariff. You're essentially being charged and getting
Nothing
just,
in return,
yep.
essentially. Yeah, Paul George, he's got another 3 years on this deal where he's going to make $55 million per year. That's disgraceful. But those teams were disappointing. You mentioned the Pistons earlier, and I feel like the
Yeah.
Pistons should get significant praise. I know who we can point to. I don't want to point fingers, but were we not the team that bullied them into greatness this year? Because last year we talked about just how bad this is the team that lost 28 consecutive games last year. We do a segment about the Pistons and how bad they've been, and they're like, you know what? You're right. We should not have Rodney Stuckey on our top 12 win shares of all time list. Maybe it's time we start handling business. And since then, Cade Cunningham ascended. He's like, I'll be the next great Piston. Move over Chauncey Billups. Move over Isaiah Thomas, Bill Dumars. It's my turn. And now the Pistons are fun. Like they have the Knicks series. I think that's going to be a really fun series. And ultimately, they could potentially move up to the 5 seed, but I think honestly the 6 seed just seems like where they're going to ultimately end up. Um, Facing the Knicks, and I think it's going to be a fun series. I think the Knicks probably prevail, but what they've done from being one of the worst teams in NBA history to now contending and potentially maybe winning a playoff series applied to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great season for them, and I feel like it'll be a fun matchup with the Knicks here. But I feel like with how the Knicks have been playing, if the Knicks aren't overwhelmingly tired or injured yet, I feel like the Pistons maybe at best take them six, but I feel like that's probably going to be a 4 or 5 game series. But overall, man, with how bad they've been, just the fact that the Pistons fans are in the playoffs and now the Pistons and the Lions are both in the playoffs in the same
And the
at the
Tigers.
same time. It's
Yeah.
insane. And then you have this guy, Cade Cunningham. He comes over from Texas all the way up to Detroit, and then he's balling out for you. And he's one of the young emerging stars in the NBA. And there's no drama with this guy. He's not in the headline. He kind of just puts his head down, balls out. He's not here trying to draw fouls. He's not really a flopper here. So Cade Cunningham's been really good. And now you have one of the top 3 point shooters off the bench on your team this year. Um, and then you also have the FIBA World Cup MVP on your team,
With who? The Pistons?
Dennis Schroeder.
Oh, Dennis Schroeder. How many fucking games
Remember,
is
he got
Dennis Schroeder
traded
going to play
eight
for?
times. He ended up on the Pistons.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to keep track. It's like remember like go to like an NBA game or a football game, baseball game, and they have like that cup game where they just move it around. That's Dennis Schroeder. That's where we're at. Where is Dennis Schroeder? We don't know.
But
Another team I want another team I want to shout out for a team that surprised me this year. Believe it or not, even though I thought this team was like a divisional round team, the Lakers. I got to give the Lakers credit. With JJ Redick, there were some questions. Is he like just like a podcast guy? Is he going to be good enough for the NBA? I always felt like he was going to be sharp, but I didn't love him on the Lakers initially. But the Lakers, like obviously we have this massive Luka Doncic trade that's changed what we thought the Lakers could have been. I would have predicted the Lakers would be a lot better if we knew Luka was going to be on the team eventually. But post the Luka trade, the way they've played defensively, the way they've played as a unit, the way they've been prepared for games, like the Lakers could genuinely make the finals, and I would not be surprised. And I believe that. Like they don't maybe have like the big man that I would have liked them to have, especially when they team up with a team like the Celtics. But I think we're poised for like a Lakers Celtics finals potentially. At least that's like what the league wants for sure. But the Lakers are well within reach potentially to make the finals. And I didn't
yeah,
think that initially.
Yeah, I didn't think that initially. Definitely not with Anthony Davis. I feel like much more so with Luka Doncic because Anthony Davis isn't a player that you can drop on a team with Jalen Brunson and then he'll carry them to the conference championship. He's not a player that I think would have taken that Dallas team to the finals. And I've seen Luca do more with less in his career, similar to LeBron James, and just have that effect on his team where he's elevating his teammates. And I feel like with this team, Luca is great. LeBron, his health and durability in the playoffs will be a question mark, but I feel like Luca will at least be able to potentially take them to the conference championship. This team definitely has some weakness, but really where this team has thrived has been Austin Reeves having the best year of his career this year. And I feel like JJ Redick has really been able to push him, unlock his potential, and kind of the question mark of him being a head coach. There was a adjustment period. There were times where it looked like JJ Redick had not slept for 72 hours in a press conference here. And then now it seems like he's really figuring it out, and it'll be a learning curve in the playoffs. But potentially he's a genius. When you listen to him on his podcast talk about basketball, there's a reason why everyone in the league respects him. And he had the best analytical podcast, I feel like, of anyone when him and Tim Legler would just sit down and break down the playoff games. Like, those were my favorite morning podcasts to listen to.
Yeah, no, he's one of the best minds in the NBA for sure. Especially even with the podcast that he had with LeBron, just going through film, talking about picking plays and whatnot, picking his brain. I feel like JJ Redick's one of the sharpest minds that we have in the league for sure. So I would give them a shout. If there's one more team I would shout out that's surprising to me, um, is honestly like I knew the Cavs were going to be good again. Another team that like I knew was going to be in the mix. I would say almost to some extent like the Lakers, but with LeBron there, maybe put the Lakers higher. The Cavaliers. I did not expect the Cavaliers to have the one seed. I didn't expect them to be as good. I mean, they might ultimately win like 65, 66 games. I didn't think that that was a team that could make that next level. Their defense has played really well. We've seen Donovan Mitchell have a great season. A lot of their young players have ascended to another level. So the Cavs, like, I knew the Cavs were going to be like maybe like the 4 or 5 seed, but to see them as the one seed, good for that. Credits to them. They've had a great season.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of with the Cavs, you do get rewarded for playing hard in the regular season. And the truth is, Evan Mobley and Darius Garland were both great in the regular season. It felt like both of them took a huge step forward this year, and they kind of just all started clicking at the right time. Then you have Max Struess there. You're able to make some key pickups in the offseason as well. But I feel like with this Cleveland Cavaliers thing, it is going to be the health of Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs. And is it going to go back to too much Donovan Mitchell isms where he's taking too many shots in the playoffs? And then also Evan Mobley and Darius Garland's game translating to the playoffs is going to be the biggest thing, because if one of those guys falls into a slump that they have in the playoffs the past 2 years, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I can agree. I think the Cavs, they just give me a lot of like 2010s Hawks, 2010s Raptors. Like, there's something about this Cavs team that I just can't trust. Where like maybe I can put more trust in the Thunder, maybe I can put more team like other teams in the past, but this Cavs team just feels vulnerable to me. Just a team that I feel like when the playoffs come around, I can see them getting bounced before the second round potentially, depending on who they match up with. Like, I don't think they're going to have any issues with whoever they play in the play-in tournaments, but come next round, if they face a team like, I think the Pacers would be, I don't know if they'd face the Pacers, but if they did, Pacers could be a tough out for them.
The
Um,
Cavs.
yeah,
Yeah, so they
ultimately,
would face Indiana or Milwaukee in the second round, the winner of that series. So the one seed plays the four, the five.
okay, yeah. So ultimately, I think the Pacers would be a competitive team against them.
Even
Pacers,
Milwaukee, if Dame is healthy, like if you have a healthy Damian Lillard and a healthy Giannis in the playoffs, like I would take Milwaukee over Cleveland. Like I feel like people have I feel like people need to refamiliarize themselves with Dame time in the playoffs. And if he can turn back the clock a little bit, like him and Giannis could like literally just be waiting for the playoffs. So I feel like the Bucks are the real wild card in the Eastern Conference Championship or the Eastern Conference playoffs that could be a sleeper team to either upset Cleveland or get to the conference championship. I definitely don't think that they would beat Boston. I don't think Cleveland would be either. I think honestly Boston's toughest challenge will probably be the Knicks in the second round if you have a healthy OG Ananobi with Carl Anthony Towns and Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, if they're all healthy.
yeah. I think the Knicks and Celtics series is going to be fun. I would take the Celtics in six, but um, Knicks are a tough team. They play good defensively. Jalen Brunson's obviously a killer as well. So, but I think that's going to be the most fun for them. Right now, they're slated to face. Currently, I believe it's the Magic.
The
Um,
Knicks
no, the
or the
Celtics in the
Celtics?
first round. In the first round. First round, I
Yeah.
mean, does it even matter? I mean, I hope the Bulls win in the play because ultimately they have the play-in tournament all but clinched. But who faces who? Chicago and Cleveland. I'm sorry, Chicago and Miami. I'm rooting for Chicago in that case, and then Hawks and Magic. I don't care to be honest. But
I'll take the
Celtics.
Magic on. I feel like the Celtics would take. I feel like the Magic would be the easiest matchup for the Celtics, but the Bulls, I feel like the Bulls would be the toughest out there. And I feel like if you're a team like Cleveland, the last team you want to face in the first round is the Bulls with Josh Giddey and Cody White. Like, isn't this fun what we're doing right now? We're not even supposed to be here. Let's go out there, have fun, no pressure on us. That is a we believe team situation meltdown where you have a Cleveland team at the top of your game, similar to Dirk Nowitzki when he won his MVP. And then you just have Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes on that Warrior team who go out and take it to him. Like Cody White, Josh Giddey, like this Bulls team, like seems like they're having a lot of fun right now. And some of the toughest matchups is like if a team just has chemistry and they're clicking, and then if it starts to go wrong and the frustration kicks in for Cleveland, I feel like for either Boston or Cleveland, Chicago's definitely going to be the team you want to face the least there because, like, Miami, it's fun. Miami knows they're not supposed to be there, though. Atlanta knows they're not supposed to beat them, and Orlando doesn't. But I feel like Chicago is the team that would be similar to, like, those old, like, Celtics gritty teams with Isaiah Thomas that was in the playoffs.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm curious to know if there's ever been a number one seed that has lost to a team with a losing record in the playoffs, because the Bulls, they're going to enter there with like 37, 38 wins ultimately. How could you possibly recover if you're the Cavaliers? If you have this great season where you win 65, 66 games, you're like ultimately leading the East for like the entire season by like 10 games. And then in comes this random team with a guy, Josh Giddey, who was disgraced from the Thunder from allegations about the minor thing. And then you have Kobe White, who I feel like most people don't really pay enough respect to, but he's a really great player. And then just a bunch of like dudes, Taylor Horton Tuckers of the world. You got Vucevic, like
No
just a
way,
bunch of
really.
dudes. They're just a bunch of dudes on this team. And they're the teams, the We Believe team. What would be ultimately a Disney sports movie, ultimately, is the team that beats you. The We Believe because we have courage and we're brave type team. That's the team that beats the Cavs. Poetic.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think the Cleveland Cavaliers would lose to Chicago, but here's the problem with Cleveland. And my take on them with the heading into the playoffs. If you get to the conference championship and Boston sweeps you, no one's going to care because in the back of their minds, everyone knows Boston's a better team and probably has the two best players, if not the three best players in that series with how Porzingis played the other night. And then if you go ahead and like lose to the Celtics, all right, that's fine. If you lose to any other team in the East, there's going to be a lot of questions about you every single time you have a great regular season. So now, like, the expectations are all on you this year to at least get to the conference championship. So anything short of that for Cleveland this year, I feel like is a failure. And I feel like getting to the finals for them would definitely be an overachievement.
Yeah, for the Cavs, for sure. I think in the East, like, the only team I can really see coming out, I see the Celtics. I don't think the Knicks, I think the Knicks' ceiling is the Eastern Conference Finals. Pacers, I don't know if they make the Eastern Conference Finals again. I think they're a semifinals team. And then like the Bucks, it really depends on how healthy the two main stars are with Giannis and Dame. But I can only really envision the Celtics in the finals. I don't know if there's another team that can beat them. They just have too many role players. Like they're down from like 1 to like 11. They have guys. They have guys that just spawn white guys that can hoop ultimately on the
Baylor,
Celtics. Whether it Yeah, whether it's the Baylor boy, whether it's Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett, like they just spawn them. And if we go in
Bowser.
the past, we can point to like Brian Scalabrine as another guy. White, like the Celtics just spawn white guys that can hoop. And outside of them, like obviously you have Tatum and Brown and Porzingis and Drew Holiday, and like the list goes on. The
Derek
Celtics,
White, Al Horford.
I didn't even mention
We're,
Derek White. Except, yeah, like it's absurd. This team is way too loaded for them. Like I can't picture any other Eastern Conference team in the finals. This isn't me being a homer. This is genuinely like this team has the best roster by far
yeah, no, it's not even close
in the
because
East.
like versatility wise, like if you need to like go big and be able to shoot, you can because you can have Porzingis on the floor who can shoot logo threes. You can have Al Horford on the floor who can get six threes on a given night for you. You can have Tatum at power forward if you need to go small. You can have Jalen Brown at small forward and run that lineup with them, Drew Holiday, and like Sam Hauser. So it's like they have an answer for every single lineup. And if they need to go big and just have a guy who's physical and rebound, you can put Luke Cornett in there. And Luke Cornett has been one of the top players as far as win shares in the league this year. And then you also have like Derek White, who I believe broke the single season record for made threes this year for the Boston Celtics. They pretty much broke every single
Mhm.
record. Joe Mazzulla has been the best coach in the NBA record wise, win wise, percentage wise, since he's been hired with the Boston Celtics. And then he's kind of one of those coaches that this team's buying into it. And then Jason Tatum is focused on like winning NBA titles. His goal is being focused on chasing Kobe, Larry Bird, and people think it's cringe that he has idols and he looks up to people. But they also say Jason Tatum's not clutch, but he is second all time now in shots in the last 24 seconds of the fourth quarter in overtime. He's shooting 38%, which is second all time after he hit the shot to send it into overtime versus the New York Knicks last night without Jalen Brown playing. So, and then he also had the last 12 of the 16 points for Boston in the fourth quarter and overtime.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. I feel like ultimately, it's hard to not put him in the MVP conversation with him. Um, and I do think that he's a guy that gets a lot of hate. Ultimately, I think it's because he's not very like he's not like the Anthony Edwards, or he's not like a John Morant who has the bam bams after each bucket or throwing grenades at the other fans. But like he's just a really good player. He kind of, I don't think he has the same type of personality, but he's like a Tim Duncan where because he's not exciting, we don't respect him enough. And I feel like in the 2000s, it was the same with Tim Duncan because he wasn't cool, because he was wearing $15 Old Navy pants. Like nobody cared about Tim Duncan. It wasn't until he won 5 rings that we're like, oh, yeah, actually, Tim Duncan was great. And he did deserve his flowers.
Yeah, and I think too with Tatum this year, have you seen the stat comparison with him this year in 2012 LeBron?
No, but I
Is
wouldn't be surprised if they're
if you compare them
comparable.
side by side, Tatum's a more efficient version and a better defender, and he has a better shooting percentage than 2012 LeBron. His free throw and 3 point percentages are higher. And then also this year, the part that Jason Tatum added to his game, I saw the Celtics' first playoff game last year, and it was Jason Tatum's first ever career triple double, and it was the first game of the playoffs last year. And then he really added this passing element that he's been working on developing in his game where he's a legitimate passer and facilitator, and this team just constantly breaks you down until they find the best shot. And they've really been playing as a unit. They've been a selfless team and just focused on winning. And I feel like that has started with Jason Tatum just taking on the role as the facilitator of the team and taking on that responsibility because he's going to get double teamed every time. And he used to turn the ball over a lot when he would get into the paint. And that was kind of where him and Jalen Brown struggled versus the Warriors in the finals, was just the turnovers constantly. But now that he's a legit passer, getting consistent triple doubles or consistent double digit assists, and he can also defend 1 through 5, where there were points where he was defending Giannis and Joel Embiid, and he can defend centers and point guards. Like there's not a position he can't do, and there's not really a hole you can point to in his game. Like he's a perfect NBA player for the modern NBA.
Yeah, exactly. Shoots threes, defends, facilitates, rebounds. So, I mean, ultimately, if he wins a second title, I feel like he'd have to get a respect at that point, surely. With the East looking the way it does, I think he's the most poised to do so. Now, um, looking at the West, who's ultimately going to be contending against the Celtics and Jalen and Brown and Jason Tatum, the West looks a lot more contested, I would say. I think we can agree on that. 3 through 8 is all determined by, I believe you said it was 3 games ultimately.
Yeah, the last 4 games of the season, probably 3 games now for some of these teams, and now so there's 2 games separating um, all of these teams. So it is a game and a half for the Clippers, Nuggets, Warriors, and Grizzlies from the Lakers for the 3 seed, and then the Timberwolves are 2 games back. And a lot of people are disappointed with the Timberwolves, but honestly, I'm not shocked that the Timberwolves are sitting at the A seed without Carl Anthony Towns. I feel like we predicted them to be like the 8th or 7th seed or a play-in tournament, and this is exactly where they ended up. Like I feel like we kind of called the NBA season pretty well. We said like the Thunder were going to be the 1 seed. And then we also called like the Timberwolves like falling out of contention here as
We said
well.
that, yeah, we said that. We said the Clippers were going to be interesting, and they have been. The Timberwolves, you select, it's like you had Carl Anthony Towns, who I feel like is an ideal big man for the modern NBA, and you picked Rudy Gobert to pair with um, Anthony Edwards. So yeah, we were right. I mean, we called it ahead of time. We're like, why would you trade Carl Anthony Towns? You should have traded Rudy Gobert and gotten somebody to fill that hole that ultimately you're going to miss from Carl Anthony Towns. But yeah, am I surprised that they're the 8th seed? Not at all. Ultimately, I feel like last year was way more of a fluke than what people want to put on about the Timberwolves.
Yeah, and I feel like for the West, I can comfortably say that the Timberwolves will win the play-in tournament and be the 7th seed here. And I think honestly, I think Sacramento is going to beat Memphis and get the 8th seed and face Oklahoma City. And I feel like OKC can take care of them in 4.
For the you mean like Kings and Thunder ultimately?
I feel like it's ultimately going to be Kings and Thunder, and then it is going to be. I feel like the Sacramento Kings, they have more consistency. They have experience now with DeMar DeRozan. Zach Levine's a veteran player with Sabonis. I feel like they'll end up beating Memphis, especially without Taylor Jenkins here. And then you don't really have like that enforcer jaws hit or miss on a given night. So I think it's going to be Sacramento versus OKC. OKC, no problems there. And then I feel like it's going to be Minnesota and Houston, and that that is going to be an
Fun.
absolute war. And I feel like every single series outside of whoever OKC faces is going to be a war. I feel like OKC is probably going to win in 5 or 4. Especially if you get Memphis or Sacramento here. Maybe Memphis could get 2 wins if John Morant goes insane, and then Jaron Jackson Jr. got to give him his respect. He's a star here. But if it's Sacramento, maybe they get a game off of them. But I feel like every other series will probably go 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the what the current series are. If nothing changes, right? OKC and potentially Sacramento, like you mentioned, like yeah, that's going to be a sweep most likely. But and then like Rockets and Timberwolves or Rockets and Grizzlies, like that's going to be war. Lakers and Warriors in the first round. You get Steph and LeBron, another chapter in the saga that is Steph versus LeBron. What's going to ultimately go down as our generation's Magic and Bird conversations. Like we got spoiled there. And then Clippers and
Yeah.
Nuggets. At this point, I'd probably take the Clippers at this point over the Nuggets, but another great series there. Clippers with James Harden, what he's done, Kawhi Leonard, Zubac, and what he's done, at least on Sports Center. Like we're spoiled in the West at this point.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets would still beat the Clippers because I cannot fully wrap my arms around Kawhi. And I've been a Harden supporter. I've advocated for him this season, but I don't think he's getting you over the hump versus the Nuggets. And I feel like the Nuggets are still overall the better team, even without a bench with Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, and Jokic. And I feel like Jokic would be able to carry them through the series to the second round. And then with Warriors and Lakers, I feel like that series, that's where the Jimmy Butler effect is really going to come into effect. And honestly, I think the Warriors win it. I just don't think the Lakers will actually have the formula. I don't think the Lakers can defend the Warriors with Luca on the floor. Because if Luca's your point guard, you're going to have Austin Reeves on Steph Curry. That's great. But LeBron can't guard Steph, and then you're going to ask Luca to trap Steph. The only way to beat Steph Curry is to beat him up and trap him. And I just don't think that the Lakers have the personnel to do that. And then also at that point, I feel like Jimmy Butler is going to have free reign in this series. So I would take the Warriors. I feel like they have the advantage, especially I saw the matchup that they most recently had versus them when Jimmy Butler hit a contested three right over LeBron. Looks like he's locked in. And then now him and Steph Curry are 18-2 when they play together. That's
Yeah, that's
real.
insane. Yeah, that's insane. I think ultimately whoever wins that series, and I think that that's going to be like a 6 or 7 game series. That's going to be like probably the best series in all of basketball in the first round. Whoever wins that series, though, will make the Western Conference Finals. I don't care who they face afterwards. I think they would face like the winner of the Rockets and Kings or Grizzlies series. I think whoever wins that series will beat the other team ultimately because like the Lakers, they've played well defensively post Luka Doncic, and they've been a well-oiled machine. And then Golden State, like I'm not gonna bet against Steph Curry. I'm not gonna bet against Steve Kerr. Nor am I going to bet against Jimmy Butler, who single-handedly carried the Heat to not one but two NBA finals with like the Tyler Harris and Duncan Robinsons of the world. So Golden State, like they could reach a whole nother gear outside of this. So I'm not betting against Golden State. Whether or not they beat the Lakers, I think that's just going to be a fun series. So I think it'll come down to situational basketball. But that the team that wins that series is going to make the Western Conference Finals and potentially the NBA Finals.
Yeah, no, if this playoff Jimmy is real with Steph Curry, honestly, I feel like the series will be over in 6 with LA because you can't have LeBron and Luca on the floor at the same time and guard Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry. So it's going to end up becoming a scoring competition. And if it's going to be a shootout, I'll take Steph Curry every single time, especially versus Luca. At this point, like Steph Curry is still that dude. We saw Steph Curry go for 50 the other night. Steph Curry is still capable of being better than Luka Doncic, even though Luka is younger and more consistently in his prime, a better player. And then Jimmy Butler's also capable of being better than LeBron James at this point. And then it comes down to the matchups of like, you know, Draymond Green and Austin Reeves, Steve Kerr versus JJ Redick, and the experience in that chess match. But at this point, I think the duo of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler is better than LeBron and Luca. I just like neither of them play defense, and Jimmy Butler is still a good defender, and he can control the pace of the game in series, especially like with what he did to Milwaukee and how he dismantled the Bucks. I feel like it'd be a similar scenario.
I think there's another layer to Jimmy Butler too. Everything you mentioned, I agree, but also the way that Jimmy Butler can get in the heads of these people, like what he did with the Celtics in years past, like what he's did with the Bucks, like he's done with basically everybody in the East. Like he's ultimately like what Draymond Green does for Golden State. I don't think people take Draymond Green as seriously as they used to. Um, but now they have Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's insane. I mean, there's stories about him in Minnesota. There's stories about him in Philadelphia. Like he's psychotic. There's stories that
In the
are
best way.
hilarious. Yeah, exactly. In the best way. He's a killer. Like I remember I watched this podcast with Jeff Teague, and he was talking about when they were in the contract negotiations with the Timberwolves, demanding to play with the second string team, basically guys that were barely going to make the roster against the Carl Anthony Towns of the world, the Andrew Wiggins, all of basically the starters versus guys who are eventually going to the G League. And he proceeded to win every single game against them, fucking screaming in their faces, saying that they're all a bunch of bitches. Like Jimmy Butler is like he's not just a killer. This guy is like he's insane. And I'm not going to compare him to Kobe, but I think that sort of pedigree is what Jimmy Butler has that I think a lot of other teams wish they had in the West that they don't have.
Yeah, and I don't know ultimately if
So
the
for that alone,
Warriors.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry you broke up there. Um, didn't mean to cut you off, but I think ultimately, if the matchup happens, I would take the Warriors, and then if it plays out the way it's currently slated, I would take the Nuggets over the Clippers. So that would essentially give us probably Rockets and Warriors, or if the Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards pulls it out, I don't think they would, but we could get Timberwolves and Warriors, and then it would probably be Nuggets and Thunder in the second round. And that would be the Thunder's biggest test to see if you go toe to toe with Nikola Jokic and they swallow the whistle, will SGA step up? And I feel like that is where OKC will be able to, where they have to step up and prove they're a contender, because you're going up against a team whose coach just got fired. They're going to be carried by Jokic in the series. We'll see what Jamal Murray does, but like, it is the number one series where if you lose to a team who just had their head coach fired, like, huge issue moving forward, and some issue, something needs to be addressed. But if you can move forward past them, then it's going to be probably you versus Golden State in the conference championship, and then it's SGA versus Steph Curry, and then Jimmy Butler is basically going to be the two. And then how is Jalen Williams and Lou Dort going to hold up in the playoffs guarding Steph Curry? And how is Chet going to survive the playoffs? Is he going to be injured, or is he going to stay healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it comes down to that series, then ultimately, also want to say hi to Bob Gino in the chat. Thank you, Bob Gino, for saying hello. Um,
Hi, Bob.
ultimately, when it comes down to the Thunder and Warriors, this could be seen ultimately as like the changing of the guard, right? We have the old Warriors team and what they are. I still think they're very competitive. They should be competitive for a few years, but the new flame, right? SGA, OKC, what they've assembled with Golden State, the era, the 2010s, we could ultimately be seeing the passing of the torch potentially if it comes down to it, with Steph being older, with Jimmy Butler being older, and then the Thunder just ultimately their path looking like it's ultimately paved in front of them. So that could be a very interesting series. I would probably take Golden State just because I trust them more, but I do think that the Thunder, they're in a position where they can really prove themselves this playoff series. And if they can make the finals, then I think ultimately they've reached expectations.
Yeah, and my prediction heading into the season was Celtics and Thunder in the finals. However, that was before I knew Jimmy Butler was going to be on Golden State during the season. So I think that the Warriors and Celtics in the finals for the NBA makes the most sense, because there's so many storylines and so much history to unpack with this rivalry, where this is the first time that the Celtics got to the finals and failed. And then you have Draymond and Steph kind of feeling like they hold something over the Celtics team. And then Jimmy Butler also beating this team at a time where it felt like they were supposed to get to the NBA finals, and he stopped them from getting to the finals not once but twice. So Jason Tatum could potentially be in the, like, a have four finals appearances at this point if it wasn't for Jimmy Butler. So you have them just officially either squashing out that history with Jimmy Butler and the Golden State Warriors team, and that is going to be the real passing of the guard. I don't think it'd be OKC. I feel like it would be a Boston versus Golden State matchup, but I feel like that Golden State has the best chance of beating Boston out of any team in the NBA because of that history there. And then you also have the Olympics with Steve Kerr not playing Jason Tatum. Is Jason Tatum going to overcome that, have the best series of his life, and win finals MVP? And then the Celtics are the first team since the Warriors to win back to back titles, overcome that, officially end the dynasty, and put their issues that they've had with Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr in the past, and avenge that finals loss. I feel like that is the most interesting NBA finals possible.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think Lakers and Celtics would be really fun, but I think that's more or less for the legacy of those two franchises. With Golden State, I think it would be equivalent to like when Jordan faced the Showtime Lakers ultimately. That
Yeah,
feels like
with
Warriors
Magic.
Celtics is what that feels like. What the Thunder and Warriors conference finals feels like is like when the Warriors faced the Spurs in I want to say 2015, or no, maybe it was the
20,
2016, the year that
2014, and when
yeah,
the Warriors lost to them or beat them.
when they beat them. I think it was 2015, or maybe it was
Yeah.
2016 was when they were both 40-1 in the playoff in the at home. And it felt like it was the last arrow really of the Spurs. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
what it
the
feels like for
Zaza
me.
cheap shot
Yeah, the
with
Zaza
Kawhi.
cheap shot era. So like that, the Warriors and Thunder series would feel like Spurs and Warriors in that case. If they make the finals, then I think it'd be like a Showtime Lakers versus Michael Jordan sort of thing, entering a new era of the NBA with the Celtics.
Yeah, and especially with the Warriors kind of feeling similar to the Spurs franchise, where they can kind of plug and play these stars here and not necessarily getting to the finals and winning it every year, where sometimes they would have a break with finals appearances. Like, it would make sense if they ended up making the finals this year. Because, like, I can't really picture a Celtics Rockets finals, and I just don't see the Thunder in the finals this year. And honestly, I don't really think that the Lakers and Celtics would be competitive finals. I think it would be less competitive than the one they had versus Dallas last year. I feel like instead of 5, it would go 4.
Yeah, I think the reason why I think it could happen is because I think the NBA wants Lakers and Celtics. Whether that's going to be this year or in years following this, I ultimately think that in the next 2 years, we're going to see Lakers and Celtics because what's better for the NBA, who's experiencing a bunch of rating issues, than trading one of the best players in the NBA to the Lakers and then seeing Celtics Lakers for the next, decade ultimately for what we could see, just multiple appearances there. I think that's what the NBA wants.
Yeah, I think that or either Golden State, and then they'll probably like test the waters with the Thunder, but I don't think the NBA, it doesn't feel like the NBA has an agenda to get the Thunder in the finals, really. It feels like it would be the Warriors or the Lakers.
Yeah, I just think like especially with LeBron maybe has like 1 or 2 more years. Steph has like 3 or 4 maybe of like peak Steph. Um, I think they want to see both of those guys make at least one more finals. Because like if LeBron wins a finals, right, he'll have 5. His GOAT conversation makes a lot more sense. Right now it's the GOAT conversation. He has 4 to Michael Jordan's 6. He's made a bunch more finals, but he's lost them all. Like there's a GOAT conversation there, but with 5, it's more legitimate. And then with Steph, he has 5 rings at this point. He's the greatest point guard of all time. I think he's already the greatest of all time. But if you have 5 and Magic Johnson has 5, fuck Magic Johnson. Steph Curry is the greatest point guard of all time. I have the eye test to prove it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a overall overview of the NBA playoffs. And when you said that, that just made me think of that stupid discussion that First Take had with PK Subban about Ovi because he broke the goals record. And then they're talking about what's more impressive, what he's doing or what LeBron is doing. And then PK Subban's like, I don't know, you're playing football on ice, and he broke the goals record, and he's played more games than LeBron James has playing hockey, and LeBron is playing basketball. Like, there's layers to it, and they're like, what's more impressive? And then Shannon Sharp's like, who are you going to compare to LeBron James, who's ever done like what he has at his size in the NBA? And he's acting like Magic Johnson never existed. Like, LeBron James isn't like a similar player to Magic Johnson. Like, he's more athletic, sure, but like he's like LeBron is like a one of a kind player. Like, we'll never see a player like him, but like we have seen like a taller point guard who can control the game like Magic, and Magic also went out there and won 5 rings, I believe, right? Him and Kareem did.
Yeah, he did win 5. I think what he means by with like LeBron is the fact that he's been so consistent from when he started in the league at 19 to now. Because like if you look at his stats, like every single year he's like 26, 7, and 7. And it's been, I mean, from his early 20s all the way to his 40s. He's played 23 seasons now, and it's just like every season, even as he enters into like the twilight of his career, he's still like a really, I would still say he's like a top 15 player in the league still, maybe top 20. Um, and so he's still like super consistent. I think LeBron's longevity is what we can appreciate. If we're going to have a GOAT debate for LeBron, like him being as great as he's been for as long as he's been, great. But again, if we're going to compare it to other leagues, the NBA is, I mean, the NBA can be physical in the playoffs, but NBA physicality compared to ice rinks with NFL physicality, with people who are fighting each other, literally throwing punches at each other, like the NHL and what Alex Ovechkin did, becoming the greatest all-time scorer in NHL history, is a massive accomplishment because not only is Alex Ovechkin the greatest goal scorer of all time, but it's like if you have a linebacker and the quarterback ultimately with one player because he's one of the most physical players of all time. He leads the NHL, I believe, all time in NHL hits. Like,
Really?
yeah, he's in the top 5
Dang.
at least. So not only is he a physical player who brings the intensity for the Capitals, but also he's the greatest goal scorer of all time now and breaking a record that like nobody thought was ever going to happen. He just was consistently scoring 50 and 60 goals over 20 years. Like I think what Alex Ovechkin's done is honestly pretty unprecedented, especially because he's doing it with one team. He's won a Stanley Cup, and he's just been consistent, like to a level with a sport that kind of chews their players out ultimately.
Yeah, especially with a sport as physical as hockey, like a show like it frustrates me. This is what like frustrates me about a show like First Take is they add these topics that they don't know anything about. Like I'm not like a hockey fan. Like I watch the NBA more. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate hockey. I like watching that like NHL playoffs like a lot and I feel like it's really competitive there, but like I understand that it is a way more physical sport than the NBA. You're essentially playing a sport where you're fighting each other and you're getting in fights on ice and you have the same amount of games as the NBA. So I'm like, for me, like NHL player like Ovechkin has played more games over the past few years than LeBron James, which was the point. And like, sure, LeBron had that dominant run where he made it to 8 straight finals, but like Alex Ovechkin's longevity in a sport this physical, I feel like is a lot more impressive than LeBron because LeBron James has load managed. That's not really a thing in hockey. And then him also breaking that goal scoring. I feel like hockey is just a much harder at least physically sport and it's more mentally and physically draining than the NBA is, where LeBron can just take a night off if he wants to. He can say, "Oh, I have soreness in my calf, so I'm not going to play for 2 weeks." In a stretch where LeBron had previously posted about the schedule, like how could we have like 8 games in 14 days, and then suddenly he had a mystery injury and sat out for 2 weeks in the stretch he was complaining about. Like Ovechkin doesn't pull that shit.
No, Ovechkin doesn't. I think just like the physicality of the NBA compared to NHL, like it's a totally different sport. If we're talking about the GOAT debate in hockey, like again, I followed hockey very closely back when I was younger, but I don't really follow hockey like I do. The way that it seems like, just quickly looking at Gretzky and Alex Ovechkin's stats, Wayne Gretzky had a higher peak where he was scoring like 70, 80 goals a game a season, but Ovechkin is averaging 50 goals a season, which 50 goals is like throwing for I would say like 40 touchdowns in the NFL. So it'd be like if Brady was consistently throwing like 40 to 45 touchdowns a season, which is extremely impressive, especially because he started as like this young prodigy, basically, made it and won multiple MVPs. Like the fact that he's still playing and I mean, this year he scored 42 goals and he's still on pace to score more. Like this guy is absurd, historically. And honestly, like, haven't followed hockey like I used to, but Alex Ovechkin, like, you could put him in the GOAT conversation if you wanted to. And for longevity wise, like, there's not a lot of other players in any sport that we can compare it to, except for like LeBron and Tom Brady, ultimately.
Yeah, and like I feel like I guess my biggest problem with this though is like not the goat conversation and then comparing. You want to compare each other, whatever, but PK Subban walked straight through them and you could tell he actually watched the NBA. You could actually tell he knew who LeBron James was, where it seemed like Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp had no idea who Alex Ovechkin was, and their ghostwriters gave them some notes before the show, and then suddenly they're screaming about, "Oh, LeBron James is better than Ovechkin. How dare you say that?" And then PK Subban walked through them without blinking. I went through the comment section. Everyone's like NBA fan here, but yeah, PK Subban totally walked through them and cooked on this. Like, it just feels embarrassing because everyone watching that knows that Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp don't watch hockey, yet you add a topic into your show where you're comparing two players. You said, I don't really follow hockey. I don't really follow hockey, but I at least respect how physical it is to not say that what LeBron's longevity is more impressive than what Ovechkin has done. Like, I respect hockey like and the physicality of it and I respect it enough to like I don't watch hockey so I can't really compare them, but like you put this topic on your show where you clearly can tell that neither Stephen A or Shannon Sharp know what they're talking about, but I actually felt like PK Subban like actually had an understanding of the NBA versus hockey where it's like, why is this a topic? It feels embarrassing and it just felt disingenuous.
Yeah, I don't understand why they do this. This is one of the probably most annoying things about First Take and why I don't think people appreciate it like they used to because you're also arguing it with like you're taking a side of something that I don't think anybody at a bar is going to argue. If we were at a bar in any city in the country right now and we were to ask like what sport is more physical to spend 20 years in, the NBA or hockey, nobody's going to argue that the fact that Alex Ovechkin, who by the way has consistently played every game for the most part each year of his career
He's
in
missed
a league,
35.
huh?
He's missed 35 games over his 20-year career.
Yeah, exactly. He's missed what you just said, 35 games over his entire career in a sport that's essentially the NFL on ice skates. Like who nobody in their right mind except for first take argues shit that nobody thinks. Like it's not in the same reality as this current reality that we live in. Nobody's going to argue that the NBA is not nearly as physical, not nearly as demanding. Plus their stars at any point can take a day off or a week off or ultimately they don't have that same I don't want to say like passion, but they don't have the same tenacity that hockey players have. Where Ovechkin consistently scoring 50 goals, consistently being one of the most physical players, not only as a goal scorer. So, like, if we were to talk to anybody at a sports bar in this country, nobody's going to argue what Ovechkin's doing is more ultimately. Not even to minimize LeBron in any way either.
No, it's not to minimize LeBron, and it's not the fact that Ovechkin is a hockey player that has broken the points record. It's the fact that he's the hockey player who's broken the hits record, you said, who's one of the most physical players, and he's an enforcer, and he's a player that people fear late into his career in his 40s. Like, who, and that's what PK Subban was explaining here. And like he just like confidently like walked through them. He's like, yeah, like I know you don't know what you're talking about. So this is like pretty light work for me. And he's like, uh-huh. But like it just felt like he was super respectful about it. And then just the way they shout at people, it's just like it's super disrespectful and it feels like the type of show that just normalized like everyone creating content around just casually disrespecting athletes for no reason in like an aggressive manner where it's not even like creative or funny. It's just straight up disrespectful.
It is disrespectful. I think also like if we were to look at that conversation that they're having too, like what happens when you're comparing what LeBron's doing in the NBA and what Ovechkin's doing, and then ultimately I think they lumped Brady in there as well. Is like I feel like saying like which one is more impressive than the other also kind of minimizes what each of these players have done in their respective sport. Each sport carries its own sort of stress and burden to it, and comparing like what instead of framing it as is what Ovechkin's doing more impressive than LeBron, the conversation should be more about like is what does this ultimately like even if they had the goat conversation with him and Gretzky, like that's more exciting to me than saying like what he's done in 20 years in the NHL, is it more than what LeBron's done in the NBA? Like it's just I think ultimately it minimizes both of the players when you do that, which isn't necessary. Appreciate what Ovechkin's doing and what LeBron's doing.
Yeah, too. And like
So it's insane.
again, like
But yeah, first takes falling off.
yeah, sorry you broke up there again.
Sorry.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but again, like to your point, like I
Mhm.
went through the comments and like every single person was saying exactly what you said, which was like why are we having this conversation? Like no one like in their right mind's actually making this argument here. So yeah, I feel like we both saw that and we're kind of like, that's weird, but it was just kind of like one of those weird moments where you see like the real like fast decline of like ESPN there. But that's something I watched. What is something that is on your mind this week? We covered the entire 2007 draft, which we didn't know was a gold mine. We went
A gold mine.
around the NBA, kind of previewed the season, some teams where we see scenarios, some of our dark horse teams, and we'll have some real predictions when we have a better picture next week on the actual matchups. It'll still be the play-in tournament, but we'll have a better idea there. But what is something that you want to rant about this week that you've watched, either listened to, or just on your mind?
Okay, so initially you know, with this segment that we do, want to watch a show, want to watch a movie when the time is right. Usually it's on a Friday night. I have a few edibles. Maybe I have a cold one. Like, I just want to prepare myself for the show. So I wanted to watch this show. I wanted to get back into Peaky Blinders. I told you that I kind of fell out of it. I'm like, all right, maybe I get back into Peaky Blinders tonight. Maybe I'll watch an episode of Peaky Blinders. But just like with last episode of the Brickyard, if you watched it, if you're a diehard fan, you notice that I didn't have a microphone in front of my face last episode. It's because the internet just didn't work. Um, and what kills me is ultimately the same shit happened to me on Friday night, where I'm trying to find myself a show to watch so that I can talk about it on the next iteration of the Brickyard live stream, and it just didn't work. So what do? I call Cox. And what kills me about this current state of the internet is the fact that we've accomplished a lot of great things in the world, right? Globally, America and beyond. Ultimately, whether it's with electric cars, whether it's with you know AirPods or iPhones or whatever you want to say, like looking at the technological achievements that we've accomplished to this point, there are still moments in time that we forget that we haven't come as far as we thought, because the internet's existed now since the 90s. Internet providers like Comcast and Cox and all these other ones, and the only solution that they've found when there is an issue with the internet is unplugging it and plugging it back in. That is the technology that we've advanced to, guys. The fact that no matter what, if you're having internet problems, the first thing you do is you call in and somebody from another country says, "Have you tried unplugging it?" Yes, dude. That is the only way we can solve this problem. The only way is if you unplug it and plug it back in. And if that fails, try it again. The fact
Refresh,
that
new
that is the
tab.
main solution after 30 years, internet providers, those within that technology space, what are we doing? Where's the innovation? I've seen the iPhone go from like this size screen to like 4 megapixel, like 4K cameras, 4K videos. Why have we not seen the same evolution with something that all of us use on a regular basis every day? Some people use it. Actually, no, everybody uses it every day. What am I talking about? The internet should be so much more advanced than it is, but yet ultimately we're relying on cords to determine our internet.
Yeah, even the homeless have iPhones at this point. They use the internet. People are like, "What about the homeless?" Like, they give them out for free to the homeless. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're not gonna give you a house. The best we could do is a free iPhone, gift card to Whataburger, and a pack of needles. Good luck.
Yeah, that's all they
And they
need.
send them
Like,
off back into the wild. And then when you need them,
honestly,
like, you know what? I want to give you a bag of gummy bears. Nowhere to be found.
yeah, no, when you want to give to the homeless is when they don't exist. Remember when we moved out of our respective apartment and we had that giant ball of cheese balls? I think I told you this story before. It
Yeah.
was in my car. Meanwhile, I'm trying to pack my car full of my shit so I can move to Phoenix. I have this giant thing of cheese balls that I'm not going to bring with me. I'm not going to keep this fucking ball of cheese balls we've had for months. So I'm trying to give it to a homeless person like the entire time, like for literally 2 weeks, driving to the gym. No homeless people. They're not up before 10 a.m. apparently. So I keep missing them. Finally, like I have a day where I can give it to some guy with I can find a person finally. And this guy literally says like, "Man, I don't like cheese balls." He doesn't like cheese
Fuck
balls. I'm like,
you.
oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll
Fuck
go
you.
fuck myself then. I guess I'll give it to the other homeless person. And to that day, I realized that like helping the homeless, like I want to. I'm a good guy who, tries to do the right thing from time to time. But when I got rejected, giving this person what felt like 5 pounds of cheese balls, and they said, "Man, I'm not really interested," I officially from that point became a villain. That was the beginning of my villain arc.
Yeah, and I'm someone, I don't know if people would consider me a socialist, and I definitely don't consider myself a socialist, but I feel like if we're like paying taxes for like the common good, I feel like building just more houses just to get people off the streets, like I feel like it's not only is it terrible that they are out here on the street and a lot of them have mental issues, but I feel like at the same time we should just like, instead of paying people six figures to work on these boards to solve homelessness. How about we build more houses to solve homelessness? And I'm fine with our tax dollars going to it. And I feel like most people, if they uh, were asked, like, are you fine with your tax dollars going to building more houses so downtown is not flooded with homeless people when you're walking around, and it's safer and healthier for them, and we can actually help get them care and treatment? I feel like most people would be like, yeah, I'm fine spending money on that instead of dropping bombs on people for oil and heroin.
Yeah, those are all things that I think are better. Ultimately, I think if more cities adopted what Scottsdale does, I think that's pretty cool. What's we know what Scottsdale's solution to homelessness is?
Push
They
them
ship it to
south.
the town over. They take the homeless people, they put them in a bus, and they just send them to Tempe. That's the solution for Scottsdale, and it works. You go to Scottsdale, not a lot of homeless people. You go to
Maine
Tempe,
would do that too. Like there would be like police, like the police from like Maine and like upstate in like the country, rural area in New Hampshire. They would just drop them off in Manchester. So like the cops just drop them off in the cities, and then they get to the cities, and then the cities just push themselves. When I feel like most people agree that we'd like to help them, a lot of people will be like, "No, I don't want my money going there." But I feel like generally most people would agree, like we already like subsidize and fund so much stuff, like why don't we just build more houses?
I will say, so I'm thinking about this because I didn't watch this, but my friend watched this, and it's a movie that's very popular right now. My friend Devin, friend of the show, Chargers fan, Devin, the one that we've talked on the show many times about, he watched the Minecraft movie,
Did he?
which, yeah, I watched the Minecraft movie. And the reason why I wouldn't normally mention this on the show, what other people watched, but his reaction to it was comical in my mind. It was hilarious because keep in mind this movie is about a video game that we all played when we were kids, and
And
ultimately
it's
now it's like,
they made it live action too, which is the quirk I hate, where it should have been animated.
yes, I agree with that. Well, best believe that Devin watched it with Jake, and ultimately they watched it with a crowd of teenagers who went and saw it, and Devin hated it. He thought the movie was terrible, but the worst that came from it is it caused him to delete social media because of it. He's
Really?
like, bro, this generation's so fucked, man. The brain rot, this movie's so terrible. He deleted his Instagram from it. Like he literally had like an existential crisis from the Minecraft movie. And to that, I don't know. I haven't seen this movie, but I assume maybe it wasn't warranted.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you watched the Flick Pick before? He's like a movie reviewer. He used to like lift weights, and he's like a bodybuilder too.
I don't know if I've seen him.
He's like, he makes a lot of good content. If you guys don't know him and you want like good movie content, check out the Flick Pick. But he saw it and he was like, this movie was so comically bad that it's kind of good. Fans of the actual game will probably hate this, but if you want to get one of those so bad it's good movies, I feel like this movie, in like, give this movie 10 years and it'll be a cult classic for being so horrifically bad. It'll be
Oh,
like Mortal Kombat 2.
I think it's getting there already. One of the infamous messages that Devin said in this debacle was, "Even for the memes, I can say it's the worst movie I've ever watched, and it made me delete social media. Movie changed me as a person." That's a review right there.
Do
Ultimately
you think it's
deleted social
actually
media.
worse than Pixels though? Like I feel like it's a similar vibe to that type of movie.
I feel like it's like hating on I feel like hating on it's just like when we reviewed the Mario movie, it's like this movie's probably worse, but at the same time, like it's a movie about fucking Minecraft, you know? It's a movie about a video game. And Minecraft's had like an arc, kind of like what Nickelback's had ultimately, where like it started off and they were really popular, and then there was an era where everybody hated Nickelback, and then there was an era where it became a meme again to appreciate them, and now they found their place in pop culture. Minecraft had the same arc. When it came out, everybody loved it, and then everybody hated it, and then everyone liked it like a meme, and now Minecraft is where it belongs in society. So like Minecraft, ultimately making a movie about it was inevitable, and I'll have to see it so I can review for myself, I suppose, but I just don't think I can take the movie that seriously. I just feel like it's a movie about fucking blocks and you know.
Well, it should have been animated. The fact that it's live action with Jack Black and Jason Momoa is comical.
Oh yeah, no, and that's what sucks about it. I think Jack Black I'm fine with, but 'cause he seems to just do all of those kind of. He did Bowser in Mario too, so it makes sense for him. But like Jason Momoa, like that's not what Minecraft was. Minecraft's like 4-bit video games, and you're making it like Jason Momoa and like
You
all
should have
these
made a
random A's.
4-bit like animated movie and make it cool, like make it look cool, and like stylistically, you could have done something cool. But no, let's just make a bloated live action movie, throw in Jason Momoa here, and then we'll try and make a bunch of money. And I think it actually did perform
Crushed.
well at the box office.
No,
I
it
think it
made
was
like
like
300 million.
I think it made like 800 million. Maybe that's
Holy,
way too much, but
it made at least in America, it made like $300 million right
I
away.
think it made
Which,
its budget back, so that means we're getting a sequel.
yep, that's the world we live in. Yeah, it's made a fuck ton of money already. Yeah, its budget was 150, and it's made right now. Currently, it's at $400 million. So we're gonna
Oh
get
yeah, it's
Minecraft too.
getting a sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's gonna make $1 billion minimum.
I mean, we got Angry Birds too, so
Lucky us. Yeah, no, it's like just these video game movies. Like, I think they're dumb, and they're definitely like they're not my taste particularly, but it's inevitable. We live in a capitalist society, so
yeah.
obviously they're gonna make a movie eventually. And look, I'm looking at the Minecraft movie. Guess what the last article is? Possible sequel.
A possible sequel.
The movie hasn't even been out for a fucking week, and they're already talking about a sequel.
Well, they already made their budget back
A Minecraft
without like
universe.
streaming here or anything.
Yeah, so they're making another one. Talks for a potential sequel began a few days after the film's release. Yeah, they've already. God damn it! This movie came out what, a week ago, and they're already sequel. Son of a bitch, we're fucked, man. We're
We
so
are
screwed.
screwed.
Yeah, it's coming out. I mean, it came out April 4th. Came out April 4th. It's April 9th, and there's a sequel coming. American cinema.
There's a sequel. Book it.
But that's what we've been watching. Yeah, but that's what we've been watching. Complaining about the internet and bitching about Minecraft and all those other things.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people bitching about the snow too, because it snowed 2 days in a row in April in New Hampshire. And then my friend in Michigan also was complaining today that it snowed. And it's nice, 80 degrees here. We're gonna hit 90 on the weekend. The pool is ready to jump into. So gonna have pool season starting from October. So it's like you don't need to complain about where you are if it's snowing and it's snowing in April. You can just move. You don't need to deal with only having 20 nice days of weather a year. You can just leave. And then if you want to stay, don't complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to know what I did in the snow this year? It was 90 degrees today. Um, and so I went to the pool. I sweat, and I was in the pool on my lunch break and enjoyed it. And guess what? Uh, being in the pool doesn't get old, and hiking in the wintertime doesn't get old, and it not snowing. I have not once thought since I've moved here at any point like, damn, I really wish I was around some snow. Nope, doesn't happen. When you're in nice weather, you're happy with the nice weather no matter what. So ultimately, I'm happy with the move, and being in the pool will not get old, especially as it gets hotter, and so will I.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get tanner. So,
I need that for my Irish skin, but yeah, sunshine doesn't get old as much as they want to say that it does.
no, it never does.
Meanwhile, enjoy the snow, guys. Maybe you'll get summer sometime, but it won't be now. Um, but we talked about the Minecraft movie. We talked about the NBA draft, 2007, one of the greatest immaculate grid drafts of all time. The current state of the NBA playoffs, the firings of Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins, what matchups we could potentially see in the NBA Finals, legacies that will be defined, and a whole lot more. Thank you for watching our live show. We'll be back next Wednesday as well. Um, Message before we leave, Mr. Marcus, before we wrap up the show.
Stay brick.
Amen. Beautiful. No, Devin like literally like